I mean, my God. I mean, I don't know whether it's the same for you guys, but it's been a very strong season for film lately.
Yeah, it's almost like the month before the big awards things happen, drop a bunch of really fucking amazing films or something. I don't know what that. It's a strange coincidence.
It is odd, isn't it? But genuinely, sincerely brilliant films as well, and not just sort of like reward bait, you know?
Right.
We had Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is just blew my mind. I loved it. I loved every second of it.
Actually, still not seen that one, embarrassingly.
No, me either.
Honestly, check that out, guys. That is that's an amazing film. The title is accurate.
Okay.
it's the oddest thing. Shouldn't work. It's too, there's too many things. There's just too many types of cinema going on at once. But it does. It's an amazing film. I was absolutely blown away by that one. We had the second Knives Out, obviously Glass Onion.
Oh yeah,
a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. I liked that one on multiple different levels. The commentary was great, but the film itself was also absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
And there's a thing for saying, like, when you've got actors who are enjoying themselves.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's just a fair description of Glass Onion. Everyone was having a ball, weren't they?
Everyone's just having an absolute blast, right? Yeah. That's often radiates from the screen, doesn't it? You can feel it. Horror-wise, we had recently Skinamarink.
Right, you two both independently. You both got in touch with me. Were like, "Have you seen this yet? You need to see this."
Yeah. There's no guarantee you'll like it. I would say to anyone that they will like this film because it's arch. It's deliberately alienating. It knows the kind of audience it's going for, and it is deliberately talking to them and excluding everyone else.
Right.
I actually listened to what you have to say about your initial thoughts there, George, on Skinamarink today, the ones you put out on YouTube just in the last day or so. And I know this is going to be an exquisite exercise in teasing Kit with as little as possible, because I really do want to make this like homeopathic in details, because you just don't want to do that to someone. But but without addressing much specific at all. Listening to your thoughts on it, I thought it was firstly very interesting, and it conjured up a lot of thoughts about Skinamarink that either I'd been hovering around the sides of or just hadn't considered at all, and a lot of things you were going into in that sort of relatively brief treatment of it, thinking about things, implications of it, things like that. When I was coming out of it, one thing, I'm trying to think of two things to whet Kit's appetite appropriately, giving almost anything away. One thing it made me think of when I was coming out of it, because I saw it in the cinema as well. So
I envy that.
That was great. I'll talk very shortly about that in a minute, the actual experience. But when I was coming out of it, immediately having seen it, one thing that it put me in mind of, for reasons that will become apparent to Kit when he watches it, is the Twilight Zone episode, It's a Good Life, the one with the terrifying telepathic boy.
Know the one very well.
Yeah.
Very well.
Yeah, so there's elements of that in it, and I think some of those you touched on, George, even when you were just describing what happens in the film. But also, I came out of listening to your video thinking of Harlan Ellison, and his most famous, one of his most famous stories.
Okay. Yes, very much so.
Because that
I have no mouth, eh?
Well, yeah, again, no specifics, but the feeling of confinement and of being played with.
It did for me. I know. I mean, I've spoken to people who absolutely loathed it, and I mean, like, viscerally reacted against it. Absolutely loathed it, and I totally get it. I totally get why that would be the case, because of the nature of the film, the nature of the work, But for me, it was intense. I thought it was fantastic. I think it may be one of the best horror films I've seen for a long, long time.
I fully agree, and I also think that I don't think I've ever quite had a cinema experience like that, because when I got out of it, I was saying to my partner, and I don't mean to mislead you here, Kit, there is an element of this film I'm about to mention in it, but it's not the whole picture by any means.
Sure.
But I never saw any of the Paranormal Activity films at the cinema.
Right.
I've seen the first one at home, but I never saw them at the cinema, and this gave me a bit of that, a bit of that experience as a thrill ride, a bit of the, quite a lot of the scanning the frame intently stuff. And this, I think when I go to cinema, especially with horror, I'm of a fairly nervous disposition anyway. I love it, but it is a bit of a roller coaster ride for me, especially when they're of high quality. or brooding or take the time. And this was all of those. And I was my partner can attest. I was watching quite sizable portions of this through my fingers, literally.
Yeah. I can see this one being a bit like the Blair Witch Project was, where people actually walk out because it's maybe the tension is too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it almost was for me at times, and I definitely won't go into this, but I basically watched the whole last 3 minutes of the film in that way.
Yeah. Yeah. There were moments where I had to come away for a bit and just collect myself,
All right, I'll fucking watch it.
Yeah,
you guys.
yeah. But again,
we're laying on a bit thick.
It's so weird. It's so weird. I mean, as I say, it is it is probably the most Marmite film I've ever watched. Because it's like, it verges on the art house in terms of the way it's shot. This thing is completely arch, and it knows it, and it just doesn't care. It runs with it. It knows what it wants to do, and it demands that you understand its cinematic language. It has this very bespoke visual language, and it's like, no, you need to get this, and I'm going to talk to you like this. I'm not going to talk to you in a language that you understand. I'm going to get you to understand my language, and it's kind of brilliant. I mean, I loved that element of it, the fact that it was like an exercise.
Yeah, it is, but it's also, I think that tends to make it sound a bit more, I think, what would I say, so inaccessible than it is, because, and all I mean by that is, I was talking about things that's sort of it's a bit like tons and tons of things as well. There are loads of little bits of horror DNA in it, so even just the first 10 minutes, you'll be like, oh, okay, this is conjure up memories of that, or this iconic film, or Poltergeist was one that caught to mind, things like that,
Okay.
So yeah, I really am going to stop there because
me too. Because I mean, it's one we'll definitely have to do at some point, because there's just so much to talk about. There's just so much in it, and I think it's going to be a bit of a horror milestone. I really do. It certainly deserves to be, because it is unlike anything else out there right now.
Oh, there was one thing I wanted to expand on, George, and this isn't a spoiler toolkit, but you were talking in the thing that you don't know much about why it's called Skinamarink, beyond it being a sort of a rhyme, maybe Canadian children's rhyme. I looked into that a bit, and not obviously it's a sort of rhyme that's sung all over the globe, and I think maybe comes from Northern England / Scotland. I don't know that much. Just me applying my own biases to it, but I certainly was sung a version of that song when I was a kid, particularly by my Scottish granny.
Right.
But the director and writer of it, and the guy who made this film happen, he is Canadian. You're right, and apparently it was an iconic part of a sort of 80s and shown a lot in the 90s Canadian kids show. So it was on something almost like their equivalent of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or Play School.
Okay. I see.
Yeah, so it doesn't actually, I'm pretty sure it doesn't actually make an appearance in the film, although there's loads of bits where it could because of what happens in the film.
Yeah.
But I think that's partly what his association with it was. So I read that up around it.
Because you could, if you don't know that context, you could very easily come away from the film not having no idea why it's called Skinamarink.
Yeah.
Like, not the first clue. It could seem completely arbitrary.
Yeah, well, I completely thought, because I'd looked very little into this before seeing it, and I was just like, well, that'll just be like the new Babadook.
Yes,
that'll be the Babadook of 2023. That'll be what that is.
It's so not right.
It is, without spoil. I feel like at least we could just keep saying things it's not, Kit.
It's so not that.
Eventually I will work out what it is. Yeah,
exactly,
no. Well, that's it. I mean, or maybe not, because that's the nature of the beast, right? That's the nature of the beast.
I'm not convinced either of you two are 100% sure what it was, to be fair.
No, I've not seen the film, actually. I'm just making all this.
But
I was too scared.
It is the kind of film where internet critics will hate it because it absolutely defies that attempt to unpick and to provide an absolute sort of theory for. It completely defies that. You're probably going to find lots of those videos, what is Skinamarink about, or what is the hidden mythology of Skinamarink, and they're going to find it very, very, very hard going indeed.
No, that all sounds. That certainly has intrigued me. I mean, I know we've got a film to talk about tonight, but while on the subject of brilliant films coming out late in the season, I will just put in a shout out for the remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, which I did catch.
Oh, I've not seen that. No.
Yeah. Oh well. No spoilers. But yeah, it's. I mean, it's just. It really is a staggering piece of filmmaking. There's no getting away from it. It's I suspect as realistic a portrayal of trench warfare as we're ever going to get on screen.
Wow.
With all that implies.
Uh-huh.
I mean, if you wanted to be curmudgeonly about it, you could say it's a little bit one note, but it's a hell of a fucking note. And
the First World War was a bit one note.
Well, exactly. You're kind of stuck with the source material, and it knows what it's trying to do. It knows what it's about, and it just does it. And it's grueling. It is a grueling film to watch, and there are moments that I certainly found my mind returning to, almost in the nature of a kind of trauma response, going like, did I actually see that? Yeah, they did do that. Yeah, that's the thing that happened in that film. And I think I think a credit to the design and the effects work is such that I'll often, with movies like that do that kind of stuff on that kind of scale, I will often find myself one step removed, going like, how exactly did they do that?
Yeah.
And I found myself so caught up in it that my brain just stopped doing that quite quickly.
Yeah,
because I was just in the story, just in the narrative. And again, I think that's a testament to how, I mean, we know about trench warfare, right? Those of us who, I think, if we did GCSE history, we learned enough about trench warfare. I know it was kind of,
and even English, I mean, you in this country, you do tend, I mean, I don't know whether it's true now, but you do tend to learn about, you learn Siegfried Sassoon and Wilfred Owen and so on and so forth,
and all that. Yeah, and I think so. We got an idea that it pretty much was kind of hell on earth, and it's smart. It's really smart, or I found it smart, the fact that it is a German film and therefore it follows the German soldiers. And the reason that I found that so smart was just because the experience is identical. There's nothing about the German war experience that differentiates it from the British war experience from the point of view of soldiers on the ground. Like nothing at all. And
how often is that story told at all? It just isn't, is it? Not in popular media, and certainly not in this country.
No. And it's just, it's astonishing. I mean, the acting's wonderful. The cast is superb. And again, really tough stuff to do, frankly, really difficult, because you're dealing with extremes of human condition for most of the runtime, really. And it's brutal, and it's very heavy going, and it's hard work, and I'm not in any hurry to watch it again, but I'm very, very glad I saw it.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever listened to the quite popular the Dan Carlin Hardcore History podcast?
Yeah, I listened to that.
Yeah.
You listen to those? He did a whole series about the First World War, and he does long podcasts as well. So it's like a series of 4-hour podcasts, like
that's
6
right.
or something like that. It's ridiculous, and the most they're him, very well written. Him monologuing with his really distinctive voice about the First World War, very well researched, etc. But there's one of those you might listen to get in the middle where he's talking about trench warfare, but he's talking about vertical trench warfare in the Alps.
Right,
because obviously the Alps at times were a front.
Yeah.
It's the most insane thing I've ever listened to, because I just never, I mean, it's depressing and grim and violent, obviously, like all of trench warfare, but it's just like the logistics of having trenches dug higher up or lower down a mountain, and people lobbing grenades up and down them and stuff like that. And it's just avalanches being caused because of that, and machine guns firing vertically up mountains and things like that.
It's the kind of insanity that I find difficult to get a grasp on, I'll be honest. My mind kind of scrabbles at it and can't quite get a bead on the absurdity.
I mean, we're all well aware of the incredible, and I mean that in the not in a good way, but just the scale of the horrors of World War II. We all know that, but I think there is a kind of bug-eyed insanity about the way World War One was fought. I'm talking about the trench warfare in particular. That, again, it's one of those things that it feels like such an obscenity. It feels like it almost would have to be fictional. It's hard to believe it really. It sounds like a too on the nose metaphor for ruling classes and inability to adjust to new technology and fighting this year's war the same as you fought last year's war, or I mean, more accurately, this century's war, I guess. But you know what I mean. Like, it's just when you see how it played out, it's just like it's kind of hard to get your head around it actually happening, and it actually happening to real people. And you know,
I mean, there are certain schools of nihilistic thought that will claim that history stopped at World War One. That was the end. That's it. There's no the experiment of humanity and of our civilizations ends there.
Yeah, modernism dying on the barbed wire. That kind of thing.
There's no point, right? After that, there is just no point. It's the height and the depth of human obscenity, the worst of everything we could have crafted from our societies and our histories, made manifest there, and everything after that is just whatever. It's frippery almost.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, and it's and it's one of those. It is one of those kind of. I mean, it's interesting. I have seen horror movies set in World War One, but it feels it's so weird because they always feel kind of superfluous, really, because you kind of can't top the horror of just what actually happened.
Yeah, that's what
kind of the worst.
That's what the good horror films do, right? That use that setting. It's like, well, there's a werewolf loose in the trenches or whatever. So fucking what? Who would even notice?
Yeah,
who
bring
would
on the
even
werewolf.
notice? And who would care, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would care? You could literally have like soldiers praying to be bit, right?
Right.
So that they can just abandon any humanity that's left and just become beasts because it's better, right?
Mm.
In those circumstances, it's better to be.
How scary is a ghost when you can actually see your real colleagues hanging on the wire in front of you and they've been there for weeks? You know?
Yeah.
What does a ghost even mean? In those circumstances, what does a ghost even mean? What how can that even be considered obscene or scary or whatever compared to what you're living, what you're experiencing? Yeah.
But to go back to the point about connectedness, and I know we've got a main topic to get to, which is the one kind of. So when I say that the German experience and the British experience were identical, and the film does a great job of highlighting that, but the one microcosm moment that kind of serves as an example of this that echoes throughout the film is when the young men sign up to fight at the start of the war, at the start of the film. They're a PALS brigade, exactly the same way as the British and the English PALS brigades were formed. They're a group of friends who grew up together, and they're signing up together so they'll serve in the same regiment together, you know. And it's just like, holy fucking shit! It's identical. It's exactly what happened over here, you know. And of course, it's that immediate kind of frisson of like, oh, I remember those stories from school. Right, those are the ones where like maybe one of those kids came back out of that entire street, you know, like okay. Okay, it's that story again. Okay, here we go. You know. Anyway,
well, and again, and as we might get into a conflict that I wouldn't say the Irish weren't involved in it, but their involvement in it was very complicated.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
of course.
That's true.
Yeah, in a way that sort of shapes the rest of the 20th century for Britain and Ireland. You know.
I
just wanted. I'm really not pulling you like a kid, but I just want to go back to Skinamarink very briefly. And it was only because of what you were successfully doing there and linking the things as I was, you know, because we were chatting about that and about the film we're about to talk about. I was trying to think of a common thing of, you know, sort of fascination, which about the fascination of these interesting early year movies and seeing if those two particular ones have anything in common. And I think, just sort of referring to the basic premise at the beginning of Skinamarink, George, I was thinking one link you can make between that and our topic tonight is they're both about people who, as the film begins, their world is just about to be pulled out from under them. You know, they're both about people whose certainties are about to disappear.
Oh yes, absolutely. I mean, that is a very powerful theme of Skinamarink, and also, I would say probably the most central theme of the film that we're discussing tonight, which of course is another one of the absolute corkers of the last several months, which is Banshees of Inisherin. I came to this like blind. I don't know about you guys. Some friends of mine just said, "Have you seen this?" I was like, No. And it was just a case of, don't look at anything. Don't read any reviews. Just go and watch it. Certainly don't watch the damn trailer, because the trailers for this film are garbage. They give an entirely false impression of what it actually is. I don't know whether that's deliberate or whether that's just because the distributors or the studios don't know like what to do with it in terms of advertising. But the trailers would have you believe that it's kind of like maybe a slightly more serious, almost rom-com-y kind of thing. It's slightly more comedic. And it is funny. Don't get me wrong. This film is laugh out loud funny. I mean, I had some real giggles during this film. There's some great, real humor in this film. But my God, is that not the only thing in it?
Yeah.
So, what about you guys? How did you find this one?
Oh, go on, David.
Well, I mean, I started to notice the hype a little bit towards the end of last year. It was doing some film festivals back in the autumn, and started to made obviously quite a high-profile release on Disney Plus in most parts of the world over Christmas, and that's when I saw it. I was very interested to watch it because I saw a trailer for it at the cinema, probably one of those trailers that is quite misrepresentative in many ways, George. But I saw it had Brendan Gleeson in it, and I'll come back to this. Because it's directed by Martin McDonagh, but written and directed by Martin McDonagh, Banshees of Inisherin. And I've seen some of his films, and I like them a bit. We'll get into that, I think. But one of my favourite movies from the UK or Ireland of the last sort of roughly 10, 12 years has been a film by his brother, John Michael McDonagh, who's also a screenwriter and film director, and that's called Calvary, from 2014.
Of course,
and that is a film set in a small Irish community on the West Coast. I don't think it's an island in that, but it's on the West Coast, and that has Brendan Gleeson in it as a priest, and it's also about. Well, it shares some themes in common and certainly elements of a mood in common. I think there's interesting differences. But it made me very, very keen to see Brendan Gleeson in a Western Irish landscape dealing with what looked like pretty darkly comic subjects. So I was very keen to see it, and that's why I sought it out fairly urgently, basically. That's where I'm coming from.
Sort of become his milieu, hasn't it? I mean, and he does it very well.
Yeah, but also I've been trying very hard to untangle my references to both of the brothers because I realised that I kept referring to Martin McDonagh films, of which this is one, and John Michael McDonagh films, of which Calvary is, and The Guard is, and things like that. And I'm going to get those tangled up several times tonight, I'm sure. So I'll try to apologise in advance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where I came to it from, except some of the. I think it was hype on Facebook, and it was from friends.
Yeah.
One person I will name check because I remember was Gary McMahon. Talked about how much he liked it, and Gary's interesting because I'm a fan of Gary. I'm a fan of his work, and he's kind of an enthusiast, which I like. Like he likes a lot of stuff. So I don't mean this as an insult to him. I don't necessarily take a Gary McMahon I liked it as a recommendation. I have to dig a little deep because he likes a lot of stuff.
Right?
And that's that's no disrespect. That's just what it is. But the way he talked about this, I don't know, something kind of got my antenna going. I thought that actually sounds really interesting. And independently, I think within a day or two, because my wife's always kind of looking out for stuff as well. And she kind of came to me and she said, "Have you heard about this?" And I was like, "Okay, it's on my list as well, so let's do it." So it kind of jumped the queue a little bit. And we got into it. But I've also got to say, like, I'm a huge fan of Gleeson. I love him he's in like two of my favorite movies of the early 2000s, 28 Days Later and Gangs of New York.
Yes, of course he is. I keep forgetting he's in 28 Days Later.
Yeah, because he's playing a Londoner, right, in 28 Days Later.
Of course.
So he's got that tricksy accent. But I love him in Gangs of New York. He's playing this kind of, he ends up running for sheriff in Gangs of New York, and he's a great character in that because he is a mercenary, but he's also, it's clear where his allegiances are, and the way he deals with he's kind of he should be a surrogate father figure really to DiCaprio's character, except DiCaprio's character's too stupid to realize he needs one. But there's a wonderful moment in that where he slams DiCaprio's. I think DiCaprio's just saved Bill the Butcher, which is the guy he's actually trying to kill. He's just saved his life, and he slams against all. He says that was bloody Shakespearean. And he says, you know who Shakespeare was, lad? He wrote the King James Bible. And it's brilliant because I've watched that film a lot because I love Gangs of York. It's one of my favourite films. And I still can't quite tell if he's meant to be joking or not when he says...
Yeah, well, whether it's a serious sort of expression of ignorance, right?
Or if he's taking the piss out of DiCaprio's character. And it could go either way because he's so angry when he says it. You can't actually tell. Anyway, so yeah, that if I needed anything else to get me through the door, it was, the fact that it's Gleeson was kind of made it a no-brainer.
Yeah, I mean, this film, the experience of watching it was incredible. Just the pure, visceral, emotional experience of watching it was incredible because it kind of sets you up to believe it's a certain thing, doesn't it? It kind of sets you up to believe that it is going to be perhaps slightly more light-hearted than it actually turns out to be. I certainly didn't expect all of these rather somber meditations on impermanence and the inevitability of change and how that corrodes who we assume we are. I was amazed by where it went. I was absolutely amazed by where this film went and the fluidity with which it went there. From the starting situations, which are generally kind of comic in many ways. There's a real wit behind the writing and the dialogue here. To these moments of absolute and utter human abjection, which are so sincere and so identifiable. It's so intense at times that I kind of had to stop with this one.
I mean, you're right. I think the first 10 minutes in particular, it feels like it's setting you up for a situation comedy, actually. Yes. In the truest sense of the word, not as in the kind of, I don't mean that as a shorthand for bad TV comedy. But it is about characters in a particular set of circumstances. I know that I wanted to pick up on how we led into this, discussing the film in the first place. One of the things that I think is really important about the film is one of the, I was going to say the film is all about. The film's about a lot of things, but one of the things the film is very strongly about is Pedrick trying to reclaim a status quo that's existed for his entire life, and and yet crucially for the viewer, I think it's a status quo that we never see.
Yeah,
because actually at the start of the movie, it's already broken. He just doesn't realize it yet.
He doesn't know. He's so inured to change, right? The notion of change to Porrick is impossible. It's not even a concept, right? This is permanence. This is life. This is the way things are, and that's it. This is the way things have always been and the way things will always be. Therefore, change itself is inconceivable and inevitably traumatic. And when it comes in this form, which is so inexplicable, because we as the viewer we're given crumbs and little threads as to what might actually be happening in Colm's mind, why he has made this decision. But we're never given an overt explanation, and that's very deliberate. It doesn't want to give you one, right? It's trying to echo situations and circumstances like this in our own lives. I found Porrick really, really identifiable in that regard. We all have these moments, don't we, where, an acquaintance or a friend just disappears. They're gone. They stop talking to you for whatever reason, and you have no idea why. And that yearning for an explanation, that desire for control over the situation that brings about such anxiety, that is who Porrick is. He's essentially someone who hasn't changed, who hasn't developed or evolved since he was about 13, really. He's in this state of suspended animation.
That's interesting because I'm sure we'll talk more about Podrick and his sister as characters later in the show. But I think there's interesting hints. I caught this more on the rewatch actually than the first time round. But that they obviously are without living parents on the island, which is referred to in dialogue a few times. And they struck me on the rewatch particularly as people who've created a kind of, obviously you're going to get a certain sort of stability and predictability to an extent on island communities like that, on remote communities like that. But they construct me as people who bereaved people who've constructed a sort of stability almost desperately. They're kind of clinging onto the rock. She is too, as by the way, although that develops obviously in a different way. And I think that I noticed that a lot more on the rewatch.
Well, interestingly, I mean, this is another thing that happens in the film a lot. Relationships echo one another. There's a lot of mirroring in this film. So you have, centrally, you have Porrick's relationship to Colm, which is phenomenally complex and lacking in explication. So you don't really have a great deal of understanding of certainly where Colm himself is coming from. And interestingly, Siobhan is going through a very similar thing. It's more reluctant for her. She has more to cling on to here, but ultimately inevitability sweeps her away too. There is a kind of like erosion quality going on here, which echoes sort of like the coast of the island itself, right? It's what's happening not only geographically but also culturally and politically. I mean, this film is set at the end of the Irish Civil War, and things are inevitable even on this island community, which is so insulated, almost like hermetically sealed. Even here, change is coming, change is sweeping through, and there's nothing anyone can do to resist it.
I mean, it's interesting. Something you said earlier, I've been churning on a lot, and I did a little essay on this because it was bothering me. Like, I mean, I agree with what you say about the relatability of Farrell's character. Of course, it's true that I don't know anyone that hasn't been in that position where you've had a friend and you've just lost touch, and it's been a sad thing, and you mourn it. But I have to say, and I doubt I'm alone on this either, I've been on the other side too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've had people in my life, and I think what I love about this particular thing is because there was almost a moment where I felt like the filmmaker had been rummaging around in my own kind of subconscious. One of the things that's been bugging me for a while now is this thing about it's perfectly possible to just dislike someone for really no good reason.
Yeah, like I mean, to outgrow people too. Well, this is the other thing, you know.
That too, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting, is it? Like the degree to which of those two things is happening. I mean, that's almost an ambiguity in the text. But I think that I've certainly, I can think of people I've had in my life where I've either taken against them without any real good reason, or I've gone off them. Like you can go off people, and it's. I think what I love about the central relationship in the film was I just found both of them painfully relatable characters.
I mean, that's something I was thinking about earlier, actually. One of the wonderful things the film actually does is, I mean, both of these characters are enormously flawed, and they have qualities that are authoring their own miseries to certain degrees. But the film very cleverly doesn't judge either one of them for it. It would have been very, very easy to come absolutely down on the side of Porrick because he is the more childlike. He's kind of the more innocent of the two because he's the more ignorant of the two, right? Colm is obviously the more comprehensive of the pair. He's the more considered of the pair. He operates on a slightly different level to Porrick.
Well, but more intellectual.
Yes, absolutely. More intellectual, more imaginative, more philosophical to a certain degree. But the film does not judge either of them for who they are or what they do. And that is a wonderful thing. That is really, really clever.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think that was one of the things that I found so powerfully resonant with the film, and what made it to me just so disturbing, actually, as the relationship developed. Because I mean, it's interesting. We've talked about how it felt like you could look at the first 10 minutes and think, "Oh, this is going to be really funny. Yeah, this is just going to be a romp. This is going to be like a comedy," and I remember feeling very, very, very uneasy in those first 10 minutes because it was just like part of it was I think part of it was what I've just said. Like it felt like they've been rummaging around in my brain because this is something that for various reasons I've been kicking around for a little while now and I kind of not really getting very far with.
And it is funny, right? I mean, it is funny, you know.
Yeah, it is.
Well, one thing I noticed about the beginning actually on both watches was when Podrick, first of all, doesn't get a response from Colm to go to the pub, and he goes back to talk to his sister, Siobhan, and she says, with a grin, lightly, maybe he just doesn't like you no more.
Maybe he just doesn't like you. You know, that's so
right. He laughs off the actual premise of the film. Right.
Yeah.
And he's forced to restate it to him, you know.
It's so wonderful. I mean, what I loved about that moment was that is a joke. That is flippant, right?
Yeah.
It's stated as though, well, that's ridiculous. It's said in irony. And he repeats the exact words to Porrick in absolute earnestness.
But it's so telling, isn't it? Because we don't get the status quo, but we do get clued into it by that statement. Because when she says that, it's clear from how she delivers the line, it's the most absurd thing she can think to say.
But you know what I mean? Like, isn't it also fascinating that it's the central female character who delivers that? She becomes the Banshee in that regard. She becomes the mythic Banshee. She is the harbinger of the death of this relationship. She's almost telling the future.
I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's something that seems to be the province of the female characters in this film, right?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, there is
there aren't very many.
I mean, there are literally two Banshees.
There you go.
There are literally two Banshees. There is, the film is called Banshees of Inisherin, and there are two. There's Siobhan, who is reluctant in the role, but is that very much, and in many respects, she becomes the author of Porrick's. I mean, when she spoilers, by the way, guys, you know that when she makes the decision to leave, he's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? He can't look after himself. He can't survive on his own. There's no way. There is absolutely no way in hell. And she knows that. She knows that. But she also knows that to stay for her would kill both of them. It would be suicide for both of them.
I'm sure that still now, obviously, especially in remote communities, but the sister forced into the role of the mother by premature death. And so that obviously happens a lot, doesn't it? And happened even more. A century ago. It's funny, the other female character we're talking about, the old lady who looks like she's in an Ingmar Bergman film.
I was going to say from a totally different film, but wonderful, right? I mean, just looks like an actual Banshee, effectively. Well, just like, oh yeah, here she is. By the way, here's the title. Here's the Banshee.
Yeah, well, she could be living in Lancre on the Discworld or something, couldn't she? But she also looks. But I love also just the fact that she's called Mrs. McCormick. it's all of that weird symbolism and sort of gothicness, but also she's just called that,
Yeah, it's absolutely wonderful. And her lines throughout the film, which are obviously prophecies, right? It's just fantastic, and I love the way the film frames her. She's just there. It doesn't make a muchness of her. She is a natural part of this setting, and the way she talks to the characters it should not work. It shouldn't work because she's too overt, she's too on the nose, and yet somehow some weird alchemy occurs where it does. She's the only character on the island who has utter comprehension, who knows actually what is happening.
Yeah, that reminded me a little bit of something like a Coen Brothers film in some ways, where you get the sort of supernatural biker or, the sort of blind railwayman or clock keeper or whatever, figure who's a little bit outside the story, I mean, obviously that's not unique to the Coens, but that's the thing it went to first in my head.
Well, I think it marries very well with the cinematography because the way this is framed and shot, there is an ethereal quality to the fictional Inisherin, right? Mm-hmm. And to the characters themselves, there is almost a sense that they are ghostly, particularly Siobhan, I find. She is, from the very beginning, out of place and doesn't exist like the other people do on this island. And Colm is having a similar thing happening to him. Both of them finding it incredibly difficult and traumatic. There's almost like a purgatorial quality to it, as though they're sort of passing through some trial or trauma and either moving on or allowing it to destroy them.
I mean, it's an interesting thing. One of the reasons that I found it so resonant, and maybe it's one of the reasons as well that I found it so difficult from the opening, and I was less kind of tuned into the comedic mode that I saw as a potential, is because, I mean, I grew up in a very small rural environment. I grew up in a village population 450, and I still get kind of claustrophobic nightmares about that. For me, that for some people it's the ideal environment, and that's absolutely fine. I'm not trying to yuck anyone else's yum, but for me it is kind of purgatory is right. It's you're just waiting for your life to begin,
or to end in this instance.
Well, I mean,
that's the other interesting thing.
And I think one of the things the film does so well and so cannily understanding that environment is that, again, it's that when you live in those kind of communities, those tiny communities, there's no such thing as a small deal. No. Everything is a big deal because you're so desperate for literally anything to happen or be going on that any event, no matter how minor, becomes a massive source of, of gossip, of intrigue, of concern, of worry, of because frankly, the reason is because you don't have enough to do with your time. You don't have enough going on today.
You see that, don't you? The shopkeeper.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was. Yeah, exactly.
Actually deals in, ironically, interestingly, in a very like a mythic witch or a banshee. Like she's like a witch from Greek mythology, or very much like from ancient Irish mythology. Who deals in secrets, who deals in guilt and in gossip, and rather than in anything more material or substantial.
Yeah, she says to Padraig, "This man has no news," almost like she's like cursing him, defining him.
Oh yeah. And then, of course, what I love about that as well is that the rules of what makes news and what doesn't, because when he does flip and deals out some real dirt, she's absolutely horrified. I mean, that's such a telling scene, I think.
I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? Because you do get these moments from Porrick, don't you, where he actually is more shrewd and actually cleverer than he's been allowed to be, or than he can adequately express with the language that he has. He is also, he doesn't realize it. He feels that he wants the stasis, that he wants familiarity. And that, by the way, is why his reaction to what happens with Colm is so extreme, because it's one of his only anchor points. It's one of the only things that he has, right? It's a certainty, and any change is negative. It's negative. It's got to be fought. It's not necessarily the loss of the friendship even that he is mourning. It's the loss of familiarity. It's the loss of something certain and the way things have always been. But when you see him in the shop and at other points in the film as well, there's part of him that is also straining against that familiarity and that status quo and wants to break it because it recognizes the injustices, the things that he points out in that shop, right, against the symbol of authority and status, which is the policeman. It's there in him too. He just doesn't like it. He doesn't like the fact because he doesn't want to grow up.
He doesn't like the policeman from the start, does he? Because he right at the start about how the policeman never says hello to him.
Right.
Yeah.
Just on a purely personal level, apart from what the policeman might represent in the community, they don't get on.
Well, that's what's interesting about his character, though, because you're right, George. He does have those moments where there's clearly insight, even if it's not, even if he maybe isn't fully able to articulate that, what's going on. But I think it's really telling that the times he gets most creative is when he's lashing out.
Yeah. Now that is fascinating, isn't it? Because you could very early on, certainly. You almost it's almost, the film almost leads you down the garden path in the sense that it paints Porrick as quite innocent. As almost a victim. But actually, he's a pretty nasty piece of work.
Well, he is when his status quo's threatened. Yeah, he is when he's discombobulated, when he's insecure. Suddenly he starts lashing out all over the place. And the policeman, I think, is a worthy target. But the poor fiddle player that he traumatizes has done nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong whatsoever.
Make friends with his ex-friend.
Although that bit is one of the funniest bits as well.
Oh god, that is.
Oh, when he's like inventing wildly, right?
Yeah, well, but turns out to be painfully close to it.
Isn't it? When he says "not again," isn't that the actual line? "Not again" or something.
Yeah, well, it's like that's how my mammy went.
Yeah, that's oh god.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's a joke, but it also sort of feeds into the slightly prophetic nature that a lot of the characters have.
That's true.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing, going through the film again on like a second or third viewing with a fine tooth comb. You find that often things that characters say in jest or sardonically come true.
Yeah, I mean, the particular thing of that coincidence as well. I think for me, there's a kind of meta commentary there again about the kind of the nature of that kind of like nothing changes. It's just the same old shit over and over again, including getting hit by. The same fucking
bread van.
Bread van. Yeah, that's right. Just like
yeah, that's the absurdity too, isn't it? I love that detail. It's a bread van.
That's how my mum went. It's just like, oh come on, man.
It's funny when you were talking about Padraig becoming very, like he's quite mean and nasty, especially when he's flailing around or when he's drunk and when he's accusatory. I think there's something interesting there as well because and we're definitely going to expand on this. I think like the concept of niceness. Kindness and gentleness. There's also a weird flip side of that, isn't there, where this nice man, he's generally been seen as a nice man. He's generally agreed to be a nice man. when roused and when treated with what he sees as injustice, can actually become, to damaging extents, but maybe constructive ones as well, can actually become a pretty trenchant critic of, and certainly a passionate critic of this kind of community.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? That I mean, it's what I find really interesting about the language that he uses is that it's totally inadequate for expressing what he wants to actually express. He uses terms like nice. Well, what does that even mean? He doesn't really know as such. He probably knows it on an emotional level, but doesn't really know it on an intellectual level. And, Colm really blasts that apart. He really does, when he says, well, the history is littered with the corpses of nice men, but nobody knows who they are,
you know what? I love that about Colm as well. That speech is a really powerful one to me, because what I love is where he owns his own selfishness. Yeah. He doesn't pretend he's not being selfish.
No,
but he's just like, but from his perspective, it's like, I don't know how much longer I've got left, but if I have to waste another 10 minutes listening to your inane bullshit when I could be writing music, I'm gonna fucking kill me. I mean, that's basically, you know what I mean? Like, that's you do feel with Colm, it's not. That's what's so fascinating about that opening gambit and those opening scenes. Like, he's definitely not doing it to hurt his ex-friend. No. He's not being cruel for cruelty's sake at all. He knows he's being cruel.
Yeah. But he feels it's necessary, right?
That's the thing. It's necessary. It's not, he wouldn't do it if he had any choice, but he really feels like he doesn't. He's hemmed in.
The way he sees it, there's an existential abyss, not only at the opening underneath him, but underneath everyone. Yeah. Underneath everyone, not just on this island, but in the world, in reality. That's what we are as human beings, right? Yeah. He has, through circumstances that actually happen ambiently to the film, sort of before the film starts, he can see the abyss now. And he can see it underneath Porrick as well.
Yeah.
But he knows that Porrick will not ever acknowledge it or be able to comprehend it.
However, just to leap in there, well, it's not really however, it's just, I think it was a good time to mention, because you were kind of both talking a little bit about that central, and it is roughly central to the film, I think, in terms of running time, the drunken confrontation in the pub.
Oh God, yeah.
Where they both, that's one of the, but yeah, both that one of both the actors, the main actors' highlights, I think, But there's also, isn't it interesting, because in that scene, they both get in a lot of shots on each other, a lot of very cutting things are said, and I think you're meant to take a lot of them very incisively, as well as, they really do strip paint off each other with the sort of rage and the sarcasm and stuff. But I think the two things about Colm is the two illustrations of this is Colm is a bit of an arsehole. He's a bit of a pretentious arsehole, and he's also his values are a bit skewed. You could say at surface level that he's pretentious and gets the century of Mozart's life wrong when he's talking about the importance of Mozart's persistence in history. That, and it's wonderful when Siobhan just crucifies him in the moment for that. But also Padre's got a point. Why are you talking to that policeman then? Yeah. If you're not wasting your life on nothingness and on inanity and on empty people, why are you making this decision?
Well, that's absolutely it. And here's the
dullard, right? I mean, because the copper's like, whatever Padraig is or isn't, that copper is just
that copper is filth, right? He's absolute filth on every level. But I mean, this is the thing. Both characters are wise in their own peculiar ways. Colm understands his own wisdom and can articulate it. Porrick really can't. He finds it difficult. But the thing about Porrick is his wisdom is that he knows what his own Eden is. He is aware of what actually makes him happy and can help him to evade the abyss to a certain degree. And it's what he's been born into, it's familiarity. He's a strange and odd creature who's been born into his own peculiar Eden. Sadly, of course, as we are shown in the film, is that it's unstable, it's ephemeral. It can't possibly stand against the onslaught of the inevitable.
Yeah, and then that's kind of, I mean, and I'm hoping that David will speak more to this because he knows more about the period. But I think that's why we've got the Civil War backdrop, right? Yeah. I mean, that's the echo of the echoes of gunshots coming across from the mainland. That's clearly what that's meant to imply. But I just want to pick on something you said. You talked about how they both, in their own way, they both have wisdom, and they both, they both articulate it, especially in that scene. They both get a go. But I think the other thing that's the flip side of that coin is they are also both myopic.
Yeah.
And what I love is that Colm can also, to a certain degree, articulate his myopic state. Like, he understands. That's what I mean. Like, for me, that key thing is when he owns the selfishness of it. He says, I know I'm being selfish, but I can't help it. I need to try and do this thing because I know. And it's, for me, that's, I mean, I've talked about this before, I think, with both of you independently, but like, for me, I've talked about this before, like the call of the artist. I mean, in my case, writing. I know one of the things that I'm doing when I'm writing, part of me has got one eye on, like, I'm trying to carve my name into the tree trunk of human history. I'm trying to say I was here. It's absolutely part of the motivation, and I'm not going to pretend it's not. There's all kinds of like ego, and that's arguably myopic. It's certainly ego-driven partly.
It is. I mean,
twist Woody Allen's joke around. You've sort of accepted that you can't achieve immortality by not dying.
Yeah,
so you're going for the silver medal.
No, absolutely. That's absolutely.
And as Colm is also doing. I mean, the other thing is, because you can't deny the abyss, the existential abyss that is everywhere and all around us, just innately part of humanity. You try to find a way of defining it, of describing it, of articulating it, which again is what Colm is trying to do.
Yeah. And I have so much, I have respect for that. I have respect for that drive, and I have respect for that need to like just commit yourself to a mode of expression and really try and achieve something. Something that's meaningful. But
you said earlier, Kit, that Colm is not. He knows that what he's doing is cruel, but it is not it's not maliciously cruel. He is not doing it for pleasure. It's not sadistically cruel. I mean, you see that, and it complicates the situation massively. Like in the sequence after Porrick has had the shit kicked out of him by the policeman, just for telling the truth, effectively, just for actually delivering some very articulate home truths. Colm comes along and helps him home. In this very fraught scene, which in a lesser story, in a lesser film, would be a moment of reconciliation, right? But it's so not.
Well, and Podrick, I think, misreads it partly as that, which is part. I mean, that's one of the things that I love about the film is every single time Colm unbends and shows kindness, it ends up making things worse.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, Colin Farrell's reaction in that moment towards the end of it broke my heart.
Yeah.
Because what I saw there was the confusion of a child who doesn't understand why it's being abandoned. Yeah. And it really hurt,
Well, I mean, there's the moment you just talked about with the beating, the other moment at the very end of the drunken scene, which actually sets up the entire second half of the movie, is that offhand remark that Colm makes that gets overheard, of course, because everyone listens to everyone because it's a small, it's a small community. When he says, I feel like I like him again now. That's the most interesting it's ever been. And isn't it amazing, like, genuine, because I've only seen the film once. As soon as I heard that line, I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's like the worst thing you could have said.
Yeah, and it's the worst thing that Porrick could have overheard.
Yeah,
right?
They could get. Well, he doesn't overhear it, but it gets back.
No, he's told, so you don't even know if it's true, right?
Yeah.
Well, but it also leads a little bit later to, obviously, as you say, Podrick, for partly to comic effect, does decide to, be a bit more of an arsehole and be a bit more outspoken, which is, both darkly funny, and that's the sequence of the film. I think when he tells the fiddler to go back to the mainland as well, but then it ends up with that other confrontation that when he goes over to Colm's house, and that's a scene where I think it's genuinely ambiguous, because I think this film is quite complicated. I think there's a lot of symbolism in it, obviously, and I think there's a lot of that, but I don't think there's that many bits in it. There's maybe a couple that are genuinely ambiguous. I think there's a moment there where reconciliation, in other words, Colm caving in, essentially, is possible, and I think that scene ends with Podrick like leaving the hut and comically ineptly disclosing that he did get the fiddler to leave, and that's the bit just before Colm stands him up at the pub and cuts his remaining fingers off, just to casually mention the kind of film we're dealing with here. I rewatching that today, I was like, I think Colm might be about to just go, fuck it.
Yeah. There are subtleties, aren't there, in Brendan Gleeson's performance there, where you can see him wrestling with this.
Yeah.
Because once again, he is not trying to be unpleasant or cruel to this guy. Not consciously, he just knows that what he needs and what he feels is going to be cruel. And he almost could bend. But
well, and I think maybe even he's looking at Podrick and thinking, well, this is a little bit more of that more interesting Podrick that I did prefer. Yeah. Like, because when he says it, he's, I think he means it when he says it. It's a genuine, because he delivers the line very quietly in the pub, like almost under his breath, almost to himself. Would that it had been just a little quieter. But I think, part of him, but then I think at a certain point it clicks in that this is just a performance. Yeah. Podrick's just giving him what he thinks he needs, and then the shutters come down. It's like, oh fuck, we're still. It's still because it's it's insincere. It's not. And ultimately, what's it driving at? Just come back down the pub and have a pint. Let's go back to the way it was. And it's like, I'm done with that.
He's done. That's the other thing, right? It's what Podrick wants is impossible.
Yeah. Now. Yeah. That's right. And he cannot get his head around that. He cannot get his head around the impossibility, because for him, it's how it's always been, and it's like an immutable truth.
But it's also how it should be. I mean, that's the other interesting thing. He's got this preconception that that's how it should be, that it's right somehow, and the world is off kilter or shattered somehow because it's not happening anymore. Yeah. And he just cannot accept that. And of course it escalates from there. It just escalates. His whole world starts to come down.
I think there's a really interesting thing if you have to take, so I don't think you are, just to be clear. You take this as a more of a realistic situation. A real kind of real life situation where how these men actually might deal with this. I was going to say that one of the things that makes Coleman unsympathetic is if you're in a breakup, obviously we can talk about platonic breakups as being kind of grey areas here. But if you're in a breakup, it kind of, especially if you're being extremely certain about the breakup and you're drawing a line, you definitely don't want to be with this person anymore. It's kind of on you to move, isn't it? It's kind of on you to leave. And I was thinking, it's really interesting that Colm, not only does Colm not leave the island, you could say he's the older man, he's spent more time there, he can be where he wants, that kind of thing, but they could both make claims to that. Nor does he sympathetically suggest that Podrick leave.
No, right.
Which his sister, which Siobhan does, Yeah. Colm doesn't have even that word of advice for his younger friend, younger by half a generation friend.
Right.
Yeah.
You should go be somewhere else,
And not only that, he has to, the one communal gathering group, gathering place on the island. His friend has to go, his ex-friend has to go and sit and watch him hang out with his musicians and make music, the torture of that, and that's really profound. That's really painful stuff. And look, I think, again, with that, rural community upbringing for me, it's like, there were two other kids my age in the village, and at one point we fell out with one of them, and that sucks. It absolutely fucking sucks, because that's it. That your peer group is suddenly halved.
It's right? Suddenly,
We've gone from 3 to 2. That's a small gang. 2 is a shitty gang, and of course you're still on the same school bus every day, right? And it's the same thing. They are, because that's the thing. It's it is. You're right. In a normal situation, it's someone you need to move, but of course they're not in a normal situation. They're trapped on a fucking island. There's no.
Right.
There's no leaving. There's no. Of course there is, but not for
not for them for some reason. And I think that's where you get into the more symbolic stuff. I actually wanted to read it because Kate queued me up quite well before with a bit of talk about the historical setting. Yeah. And I sort of wanted to address that at least briefly now, just because I think it leads into a little bit what we talk about the characters of Colm and Podrick, and I think a little bit. I don't think I'm reinventing the wheel here by reading some of this stuff into it, by the way. So I'll skim through this very quickly, at least initially, because some of it's, I think, fairly obvious for anyone trying to read, especially basic political symbolism into this. But I think there's something. What I was thinking on rewatch was there's something more interesting about it being set during the Irish Civil War in the early 20s rather than it being set, say, 10 years before that, when Ireland was, or quite a lot of people in Ireland were trying to escape the rule of the British. Yeah. And the reason I mentioned that is I was messaging Kit about this, but the first time I watched it, I became hung up on the political reading of it quite early on in the film. And that's because it's, the setting is, not only does Podrick have a calendar of 2023, but also because, you hear the gunshots and explosions coming from the mainland, and characters comment on it pretty early in the film. So, for someone politically inclined like me, you get a real early anchor into it there. And I was thinking, the first watch through, I was thinking in terms of that I was looking into allegories in it and stuff. I was thinking of Colm as basically representing nationalism, or a wish for escape of nationalism, and Podrick as representing a kind of unionism, a kind of desire for that status quo, a sort of conservative, small c, desire for the unification to continue. And I was thinking later on in the film, we'll talk about these characters a bit more, I think, including Dominic, who we've not really talked about at all.
I was going to say Dominic, yes.
I need to get onto that,
Yeah, well, I'll put that in its own little subsection because we'll talk about that later. But Siobhan and Dominic both represent forms of escape. I think she, on some level, represents Irish people who, for whatever reason, left Ireland during this sort of long, complicated conflict. But, let's say the long 1910s. I think Dominic represents another kind of person who left in a different kind of way, someone who also couldn't take it in a different way. But to get back to just Zero and Colm and Podrick, Colm has had enough. Colm has been actually thinking that he's had enough for quite a long time, but Podrick is confused by this.
Yeah.
Colm wants to draw a line. Colm wants to be separate. He wants to be different. He doesn't want things to be the same. He wants things to be more lasting. He wants things to be more meaningful. Podrick is horrified by this. He's confused by this. He's disorientated by it. His very well-being is shaken by this, and he can't leave it alone. But neither of them's leaving the island. And I think that's where my first viewing of it as a sort of nationalism, unionism thing works. And I'd be happy to expand on that, but I think you get the gist. But what I got on the rewatch and thinking a bit more about the actual Civil War setting as opposed to the sort of Irish rebellion, War of Independence, whatever you want to call it, setting, that conflict's a bit different, isn't it? Because that conflict's actually about the factions of Irish, the birth of Irish society, essentially civil society, the parties which grew into what's now Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. They represent two different slight things, don't they? Because Britain has essentially been broken free of to an extent. And now it's about full idealistic, no compromise independence, or compromise and a treaty. That's actually what this period is about. So on that level, if you want to get a bit more specific, and I think maybe McDonagh wants us to, I'm not sure. I think that in that sense, Colm is lack of compromise, isn't he? He is that portion of it without reading one-to-one into it. And Podrick wants a compromise, and a lot of characters around Podrick want a compromise. His sister thinks a compromise is sensible, and when she sees there can be no compromise, she leaves. I think this is maybe what it gets from its early 20s section, and maybe where they're less specifically nationalistic unionism, and they're less specifically tied to Irish politics as a whole. Maybe they're just tied to sort of elements of human nature. Colm won't compromise, and Podrick would be desperate for a compromise.
Yeah, that's fascinating because you see that running throughout the entire film in their relationship. He tries everything to approach this situation and to force a compromise.
Well, the other thing that just occurred to me there is, based on what you said, and I was thinking too back to what you were saying that cued that off, George, about how and the fact that one of the things that's interesting, right, is that we know this has been coming for Colm for a long time, and for Podrick it drops out of the clear blue sky. And that's just a difference. That's just the thing about human beings, and you never know what's going on inside the other person's head, and that's just something, again, sooner or later we all encounter on that one side or the other, right? We realise we've done a ton of thinking that the other person hasn't, or we realise it's the other way around and we're kind of left high and dry, and that's just one of those things that could happen. But it also occurred to me that what's fascinating about Podrick, again, this nice guy, whatever the hell that means on the surface, it seems to me that he'd be quite happy to be lied to. He'd be quite happy for Colm to just pretend they were still friends.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah.
Like if Colm just turned up and they had the chat for a couple of hours each day, I don't think actually Podrick gives a shit if Colm really likes him or not. He'd be quite happy if he just keep up, because clearly he has been pretending. Clearly he's been pretending for months, if not years at this point,
Yes, because you do get, from ambient clues, like you have that discussion with the priest in the confessional, for example, where you learn that the despair, as the priest calls it, has been there for a while, right?
Yeah.
So you are right. That lie or that illusion of a relationship has been sustaining for a little while now.
And again, for me, that chisels away a little bit at the kind of nice guy, framing of Podrick. It's like that's not a nice thing to want. It's not a nice thing to have. But it does. But on the flip side of that, there's also something I think very abject and pathetic, and therefore paradoxically sympathetic all over again, because it's like, wow, that's so sad.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it speaks to two aspects of the character. First of all, the childishness of the character, that lack of emotional development where something that's entirely aesthetic and performative is enough. And that's very infantile. That's emotionally immature. That's emotionally stunted, right?
Sure.
But also it speaks, as you say, to the abjection of the character, where it's going to have to be enough.
Yeah.
There is nothing else. So that will have to be the lifeline.
Well, I think where both of those things that you mentioned tie back into a broad political reading of it is the use of violence as a tactic, right? The use of violence as a protest, as a drawing of the line, as it's not so much a refusal to compromise, but a beacon of your refusal to compromise.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really interesting that, it's funny you were talking about sitcoms, actually, and I want to get back to that a bit later, but I noticed that at roughly the 30-minute mark, it's just after the 30-minute mark, is the point where Colm first brings up the threat to cut off his fingers.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because that's after you've had the first priest scene, and it's after it's grown out of being just over a half hour, sort of classic British TV half hour of something like The Lightly Lads, of something like,
or Father Ted, just a bit random.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, incredible we didn't mention Father Ted until this point.
I mean, like, the setup is Father Ted, right? And I think, there are elements of this that I think are deliberately resonant of Father Ted as well. It's trying, funnily enough, again, it is trying to set up this almost illusion or this red herring that it's going to be a slightly jokey sort of comedy piece. Yeah. But at the same time, it actually also emphasizes some of the subversive abjection that is part of Father Ted as well, because the situation is the same, right?
Older guy with denser younger guy companion. Mother figure, not mother, but mother figure that looks after them, The
similarities are quite stark.
Yeah, I think so. Also, there's a Father Ted actor in it. There's at least one Father Ted actor in it, because I came away watching this to talk to my friend Chris and said, I was amazed there was no one from Father Ted in that. And he was like, look closer. And basically, one of the actors, I should have looked him up, but one of the actors who's in the bar, I can't remember if it's the barman himself or his sort of assistant, but he's he apparently plays two roles in Father Ted. I didn't realize this until Chris pointed out, but he's both the cinema owner in the Blasphemous Film episode.
Oh my goodness!
He's the sort of verbally incoherent Euro song host.
Yes.
So he's in it. Yeah. So there is a small part of Father Ted DNA directly in this, as well as
nice.
Wow. Well, I mean, that emphasizes the link even more so, doesn't it?
Well, as I say before, I love Calvary, and I know, again, that's the other McDonough brother, but a dark comedy about a priest who undergoes outlandish, absurd situations. That shines through, and I think in some ways this feels like Martin McDonough taking on the baton of Calvary in some ways and running with it.
Yeah.
But I want to pick up on what you're saying there, David, about how it's a turning point at the half-hour mark, and how you're absolutely right. Up to that point, it's a half hour, and it is comedy. I mean, as I say, I report feeling uneasy throughout because I kind of partly that's my personal emotional response to the setting. It puts me on edge, but also just because of the seriousness of the performances. I mean, Gleeson fucking means business as Colm. It's very clear he means business, but that's why at the half-hour mark that threat is so chilling.
Yeah.
And part of why it's chilling, I think, or part of why I found it chilling, was a feeling of inevitability. We talked earlier about how one of the things that this film has actually is spoken prophecy, and it feels to me that as soon as Colm says that, it's a moral certainty that he's going to cut one of his fingers off before the movie's over. There's no way he's not going to do it, because he clearly means it.
Yeah.
And equally clearly, Podrick cannot believe that he really means it.
Yeah, and it's almost
obviously.
Right.
It's also almost like the metaphysics of the setting means that because he said it, it's going to
come to pass. But I want to pick up on something else you said, David, in terms of linking it to violence, and I think that's really interesting, because it is violence, of course, but what's fascinating is it's specifically it's self-mutilation.
Yeah.
It's violence turned inwards.
And it's more profound than just because of who he is and what he is. He's a musician and a composer. That makes it even more perverse and profound, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's done it of his own reason for making the decision in the first place.
Yeah.
Why? There was part of me that was like, why not a toe?
Yeah.
It would hurt just as much. It would send the fucking message. Why a finger?
It's almost like them. I mean, yeah, there's a self-punishment element to this, isn't there? There's a martyrdom element to it too. I mean, that is Colm right through, right? He has a martyr mentality.
Or is it about? Is it that he's just so determined for Colm to understand that he's serious that he says something? Sorry, that he's serious to Podrick, that he says something that Podrick can't take seriously. I mean, I love that. Because that's the kind of inevitability of it, the kind of paradox of it. Like, it's clear to us, the viewer, I think, that Colm is deadly fucking serious.
Well, actually, that's a really fair point, because all the way through, you also get the impression, and this is sometimes due to the script, this is sometimes due to Colin Farrell's performance, but you get the impression that Porrick doesn't necessarily believe that this is real. He thinks that it's a joke, or he thinks that it's something.
It's an April Fool's.
It's an April Fool's, right? It's a phase. It's something that he will find a way through somehow, and that's a defense mechanism ultimately, isn't it? Because if it's a joke, or if then he doesn't have to feel the despair over it. He doesn't have to work through it. He doesn't have to change as a result. But of course, Colm is absolutely dead set on making certain that he knows that it's real. He knows that it's serious, and he just wants to be left alone.
And the thing is,
sorry, Kate, you go.
No, you go ahead.
I think it's meant to remind you of not a violent political acts committed mostly on the person who commits them. So I think it's meant to put you in mind of, say, the burning monk, for example.
Yeah.
But I think there's also something. There's something about taking the product of that violence, the evidence of that violence, and casting it at the door. Right. There's something about that, because that feels very old folkloric, but it also feels it's something of a Martin Luther about that as well.
Yeah,
you're throwing it on their doorstep. You're doing it almost on their doorstep, but you're making it their problem. You make it unignorable. You're literally giving him debris that he has to work out what to do next with.
Yeah, that's a fair point, actually. And of course, it's a finger, so it's accusatory as well.
And it's also the battle cry of, and it's a really kind of, this is something that in a previous life I wrote a song about, because the phrase kind of bugged me so much. Look at what you made me do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's a phrase that I find freighted with all kinds of unpleasantness and weight and ego, and there's a lot of ugliness behind that. I think it's an abdication of responsibility. I think.
Yeah, it's an abusive relationship, isn't it? That's the language of an abusive relationship.
By definition, which of course this is.
Yeah.
We haven't really kind of said it in those terms, but this kind of is. I mean, again, flipping it back around again for a second, like. Colm has been lying to this man for months, if not years, about his true feelings. That's an act of cruelty.
Yeah.
As much as telling him they don't want to be friends anymore is an act of cruelty, lying to him for that long has been an act of cruelty as well.
On the other hand, it's also abusive on the other side too.
Well, yeah.
Colm tells him no.
Yeah, absolutely. And Podrick just finds reason after reason after reason after reason to discount the very clear wishes of his ex-friend, but of another human being, and again that just completely demolishes for me the model of Podrick as a nice guy, because that's not a nice nice guy in a modern parlance. That's exactly how nice guys
yes, absolutely. I mean,
inverted commas behave, right?
I mean, the moment you sort of if Colm were a woman, then that the entire script would be flipped, wouldn't it? That would make Porrick the bad guy of this film.
Yeah, and I definitely think you meant to think of stalking, and you meant to think of modern and pre-modern dating and stuff like that. And and I think you're quite right to bring up the nice guy thing there. But Podrick in that way is nice, as well as the ways in which he's actually nice in the way we would credit. But I think there's also something about the concern, the genuine concern for a friend, because obviously they're people in the 1920s and they don't have our language, and even if this was set in the modern day, which in some ways it probably could be, really. I mean, you could do a thing here where the Civil War. I think they just refer to it as a Civil War, and they all seem to be so vague about it. You could do a thing where like a futuristic hovercraft lands at the end, and you find out they're actually in the 2340s or something. The latest Civil War, but flippancy aside. I think when Colm talks to Siobhan about about that he might be just very sad, he might be in despair, he might be ill, and Siobhan repeats it to Colm's face, like, I think you're ill, I think they mean that too. It's not all selfishness. That he is acting so out of character and so intensely and so violently and so, in a sense, absurdly. If a friend like mine, a lifelong friend like mine, acted that way, I'd be hurt. I'd be devastated. I'd be confused. I would also be really worried about them.
Yeah, because there is an element of neurological disorders or degenerative diseases here. There are echoes of things like dementia and Alzheimer's here.
Yeah. And also, I think Podrick. Sorry, just briefly, Kate. I think Podrick doesn't get that. But he doesn't get the depth of the feeling that could make Colm do this. But Siobhan, who's a cleverer character and a character I think that's hinted to be nearer to Colm in several ways psychologically, does get it. Yeah, but she still doesn't think he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, and I think for me,
sorry, Kit, go on.
No, you go.
Although she does ultimately come to the same conclusion, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Well, she comes to a conclusion that she has to get out of there.
Yeah.
But that's different. That's a different decision.
It is and it isn't, because she knows that Porrick will never leave. There is a divorce there which almost like she can't say what Colm can, which is, we're done, it's over. She knows it is. She absolutely knows it is.
Well, I hadn't really thought of Podrick basically undergoes 2 breakups in this film, I suppose.
Yeah.
Both people who aren't.
I'm sorry, he undergoes 3. We haven't talked about the donkey yet.
The donkey, no.
The unkindest cut of all.
Actually, he undergoes 4.
Yeah.
That's true. And Dominic and Porrick's relationship are echoes of Porrick's and Colm's.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. He doesn't even bother. The only reason he bothers with Dominic is almost as like a surrogate, and it's almost like this is where the nice guy thing comes in again, and almost exposes itself. The only reason he even starts palling around with Dominic, who he regards as his absolute lesser.
Yeah.
He regards him as the village idiot, as someone who's not worth bothering with. The only reason he does it is out of spite.
But don't you think as well as this thing about hierarchy of friendships? That's the thing that he keeps making me think of. Like Podrick discovers to his absolute horror and disbelief that a relationship he thought was on an equal footing fundamentally wasn't.
Yeah.
And that Colm has actually considered him in some way less or in some way, beneath or whatever the hell it is. And there's all that thing about like, I'm nice. That whole extended conversation with the barman where they're trying to kind of reassure him, no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're okay, kind of thing. But like he immediately, you're right. He pivots to the relationship with Dominic, which is equally as one-sided as it's clear the Colm Podrick relationship was,
and as abusive, right? It's as abusive.
Yeah.
What's fascinating is
in what sense do you think it's abusive, George? I just wanted to pull you on that.
In the sense that Porrick doesn't really want to be friends with Dominic. He doesn't really feel that sincerely. It's a surrogate, it's a way. Yeah, it's exploitative. It's a way of saying to Colm. It's like it's demonstrative. He's saying to Colm, "Oh, look, I'm okay. Right. I have someone here." But the way he treats Dominic is dismissive. It's largely dismissive.
A simple prop to occupy my time, as Michael might say.
What's fascinating is that Dominic pulls him. Dominic, who is actually framed as not being that clever throughout the film, actually is very insightful in many respects because he gets it. He actually says to Porrick at one point, "I thought you were better than most of the people on this island. I thought you were one of the nice ones, one of the good ones, and you're not, are you?"
Well, that's at the point at which Podrick's confessed to the lie he made up about.
Exactly.
He confesses a bit about the film. I love that scene. I love how horrified Dominic is. Like genuinely horrified. But Dominic's not an angel. Let's be real about this.
No, Dominic's not an angel at all.
He's kind of he's difficult. But I love that moment because it's completely sincere. He's absolutely gobsmacked.
Yeah.
And again, it's part of Podrick's long, slow slide down. He manages to even alienate Dominic.
Yeah. Well, do you know what's amazing about that though? That I only caught on the rewatch is Dominic is horrified by that. But the thing he's horrified about specifically is that Podrick has lied to a man that something bad's happened to his father.
Yeah.
Isn't that fascinating, given how a horrendous Dominic's relationship with his own father is?
Right.
Yeah,
on some level, it upsets him to his core.
Well, that might even be why, that's kind of, that's a really good catch, though.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Yeah.
Because I think Dominic, what a performance.
It's amazing, actually. It's wonderful.
If this kid doesn't win the Oscar, I'm going to be very upset. I really want him to get the gong for this, because this is just, and he's a great actor. I've seen him in a couple of other things, and I know he's got a very, very big role coming up. Because this is, I don't know if I assume both of you know about it, but I think, I'm going to say this now, I'm going to be wrong, but I think this is the guy they've cast for the Joker in the next.
He's in
that's right.
the tail end of the Batman. Hardly glimpsed at all, but
that's right. He's in the cell with the next to Riddler, isn't he, at the end? And we think he's going to be the Joker in the second movie, which please, bring it on.
Up for that. Up for that.
But this is just, I'm just staggered by this performance.
Yeah, and it's framed by staggering performances as well. It's absolutely incredible, this film, in that regard. There's an obsession in the film with faces, with like close-ups of faces, very long, slow facial expressions, and they're tectonic, right? Especially Brendan Gleeson. I mean, his face is just tectonic anyway. But you see so much going on in faces, and there's so much raw emotion that it can be quite difficult to watch at times.
Yeah,
well, I mean, the thing about Dominic is he's really interesting, because for me, he's a great example of a character who is, his character kind of illustrates the difference between innocence and goodness.
Yeah.
Because I think Dominic is an innocent fundamentally, like he really is.
Yeah.
But he's not good morally. Nothing quite as straightforward as that.
The film just won't let you get away with that, will it? It won't let you get away with that conflation in the same way that it won't with any of its other characters. The ambiguities are profound throughout. And I wonder if that will go against the film in certain, in certain places, in certain demographics. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I think it's been an enormous success on its own terms.
It has, and that's really heartening to see.
Yeah,
that's really wonderful to see, because it deserves to, right? It really deserves to. I mean, I'm a huge advocate of cinema that defies formula and defies expectation, and that's this to a T.
And I mean, the thing about Dominic and the way in which his character arc plays out, the thing that I was reminded of most strongly was the arc of the character of the kid called Billy in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And he's a very similar character in many ways. I'm assuming you both seen it. Let me know if you haven't.
I have.
So, like, that it's a similar thing where it's that he's not necessarily good, but he is fundamentally innocent. Yeah, and it's in both cases they're completely undone by in large part by just a completely honest, healthy, natural desire for love, for companionship, for sex, but you know what I mean, like, but it just
well, probably for a mother in his case as well,
right,
as much as Podrick has benefited from her mothering,
Yeah.
I mean, he comes to stay at their house, doesn't he? They are his surrogate parents for a night.
Yeah.
Even as he's trying to chat her up, in another way.
I mean, there's a whole raft of stuff going on there. I mean, that's really funny, actually, because there is a Freudian element to this whole film too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can definitely read Porrick as a kind of id. You can read Colm as an ego, and Siobhan as a kind of super ego. Observing it all and analyzing it all from afar.
I mean, it's interesting. I think it's interesting the degree to which Siobhan is, the degrees to and the complicated ways in which Siobhan is both a victim of circumstance and ultimately a creature of agency. And I think that is fascinating. And I think a lot of that's about the time and the place and the setting and her own gender and the expected role she has to fulfill as that. But I've got to be honest. I mean, this is not. I mean, I think this is a brilliant film. It's not a terribly uplifting film.
No.
To put it mildly, but for me, Siobhan's arc is one of the few rays of light in the film. Even as it's devastating in terms of what happens with Dominic. But I love how even there, for me anyway, the film, it feels very clear to me. The film in no way blames Siobhan for what happens to Dominic.
Absolutely
it's not her fault in any way. Like
it's just it's not even played with an implication of that, is it?
No, exactly.
No,
it's
not at all.
It's just a really shitty thing that happened.
Yeah, I mean, if there is a manifesto in this film, then I think it comes through Siobhan, which is the often that you have to escape. You have to just get away from these. If these situations, these circumstances, these relationships are corrosive and are destroying you, it can be painful and it can even be cruel. It has to be done.
Look, I mean, I'm glad you say that, because obviously that's that was my feeling too. But I'm very aware that that's my prejudice, because that's what I grew up in and that's what I needed to get away from. But like, I mean, it's an interesting thing. I'm hanging out next weekend with a friend of mine who I spent, we lived together briefly in Barnstable when we were both students, and we've stayed in touch. And every year our families get together for a week. We rent a cottage somewhere, we play board games all week, and it's lovely. And I've got that coming up in a week or two, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I think about my friendship group from that time, and I wrote about them, in My Life in Horror.
Yeah, of course.
The werewolf crew that I used to hang with, and he's the only one I'm still in touch with, and he's the only one that I still see, and that's because he's the only other one that got out.
I mean, it's funny because it's interesting that this film has come about when it has, in the sort of it's obviously not the post-COVID, because COVID is still very much here, but it's sort of like the post-pandemic situation, because a lot of people have had that experience as a result of those years. Relationships have changed. People have lost contact or drifted further apart, or have found that they just don't work together anymore. I've had that experience over the COVID period with some people who I would have considered very close friends once upon a time. It has just happened.
Well, meeting up with old high school friends or old university friends, I mean, whatever the actual setting in which you did either of those things, for people, and most people did at least one of them, those are kind of little. I thought about this before, Kit, when you talk about growing up in a small community. All high schools are a bit like that, aren't they? Most unis are a bit like being on a little island for a while, even if you're not physically on a little island, and meeting up with people who you made that island work with. Is inherently awkward. I've got an old uni friend meeting coming up as well, and it's I'm really looking forward to it, but there's always that slight tension there, where you're like, will this work? Will this even work at all anymore?
And I think as well, I think there is a kind of you do inevitably find yourself making comparisons, right? You do look around at like how is, I mean, that's the phrase, how's everyone doing, right? How are they doing, and what do we mean by that? Like, what have they become? What are they are they success? I mean, that dreadful word, are they successful?
I hate that so much.
But I think, I mean, me too, but also it is something that you kind of think about, or I think about anyway. It's part of the makeup of it, and I think that's just because, I think it's just because that's just an artifact of having grown up in the society I've grown up in, and it's something that we are kind of conditioned to think about, and in those terms. And all right, I can pick up on the fact that I'm doing it, and I can kind of take a step back and be like, don't be a dickhead. It doesn't, that's not, but it's still there. Like the impulse is still, I still feel it, because you can't. I can't help but. I mean, think about what I just said there about the guy I'm still in touch with is the other guy got out. Like I don't actually know what the others are doing. I don't have a clue. Oh, I know one of them died of pancreatitis a couple of years ago and then drank himself to death, basically. But I don't know what the rest of them are.
And then everyone has groups like that, don't they? Everyone has groups that have sort of vanished into around the edges. For what become the edges for you, they've receded. And often you were part of that recession as well. That's the thing, is we've you were saying before, we've all been calm as well.
Absolutely.
We've all taken some of those steps to minimize some people's presence in our lives. Even if you've had the happiest life, you've done a little bit of that.
I mean, I've got vivid memories of an individual. When I left when I finally left Barnstable to move to London, an individual who I bumped into a couple of days before I left, and I'll never forget it. Him giving me a slip of paper with his new phone number because he was moving as well as going to Bristol, saying like, please stay in touch, make sure you stay in touch, and take it off and say, yeah, of course I will. And thinking very clearly, not a fucking chance, mate.
Yeah.
Like very deliberate. Like this is going in the gutter the second I'm around the corner, and I am never fucking dealing with you again as long as I live. You know what I mean? And like that's fine, whatever. That's not quite the same as because we weren't stuck there together. I didn't just turn around one day, but like I've felt that. I've absolutely felt that. Like I don't need you in my life anymore, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know,
yeah,
we were to each other, it's done. And I've been on the other side of it, and it fucking sucks, man.
Yeah, it does. It does suck. But
it bites the big one when it's like, what? We were friends.
It's it's one of the most hideous things you can experience, whether it's romantic, whether it's platonic. It's absolutely hideous because it does lead you to reevaluate your sense of identity, which is always traumatic, right? And that's what Porrick, he just will not do, right? He will not do. He takes it as an assault, yeah?
Well, and of course, most, whether you think what Colm did was, just or wise or good for him or anyone or not, it's at least direct. And most platonic breakups are much less direct. And that's got its own curse to it because obviously, I live in London and, this is partly about being in my late 30s now, but it's also partly about living in London. And the real breakup that everyone goes through gradually, and sometimes it takes years, is, yeah, sure, we'll hang out. We'll get something in the diary. Next 3 months. We'll have to sort something out. We'll have to sort something out. Little, slightly larger gap between the messages. One of you initiates another message. Yeah, of course we're going to do it. Yeah. And that's really how it goes more often, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's where I guess, you're back to the genius of the island setting. Which forces a situation where you can't just ghost someone. Like that's not meaningful activity because there's one pub, so you're all going to end up in there. You know what I mean? And so Colm is forced by circumstances, if he's going to say anything, to be as direct as he is.
Yeah, and I mean, it makes it even more fascinating given the closed nature, almost like incestuous nature of the community, doesn't it? Because this is not like, you're right, it's not like just say, two friends from a group of friends who decide they don't like one another, or one decides they don't like the other. That can be worked around. Things can be done around that in any situation that is not so landlocked. But here, the ripples of that will spread through the entire community.
It's funny actually because you both talked about sitcoms before as being part of the makeup of this film, and I actually I was thinking any number of sitcoms, Peep Show is just the first one comes to mind. Have had episodes centered around one character not speaking to the other one, but I was thinking one show where you could do this, replicate the structure of this, or at least the initial structure of this episode really well, would be Red Dwarf.
I was just thinking that exact thing.
Where there's no escape. And actually no other people, except for, let's say we're talking from listeners' perspective here, one that you've willed into being and now realise you don't want to be with. I could so easily imagine a 25-minute Red Dwarf version of this.
Yeah, you could actually do. I mean, one of the more interesting ways of resurrecting Red Dwarf would be to make it not a comedy, right? Or not as overt a comedy. Because the inherent darkness of the situation. Again, you could do it with Father Ted too, Although in that instance it would be markedly too similar to Banshees of Inisherin.
Yeah, or Calvary.
Calvary, yeah.
It's funny, I know sorry, Kate, you go.
No, go.
I was just going to say, just before we go, because we were talking about Siobhan quite a lot there, on rewatch, one of the bits that broke my heart, and this actually speaks to sort of, the trap that Siobhan's in as well, and the trap that she escapes, and you're right, that is an uplifting element of the film. It's right near the start when Podrick, it's still sort of sinking in that Podrick can't go for a drink with Colm anymore, to where all parties concerned. And Colm, sort of as a pretext, really, as a sort of icebreaker or, third party, he asks his sister if she wants to go and get sherry down the pub. And her face absolutely lights up ear to ear, and it just is such a sweet way. And she goes, I will so. And she looks delighted to the point where you're like, when's the last time her brother, one of her only companions on the island, just asked her down the pub to have a drink? And obviously some of that's generational. She marches into the pub on 2 separate occasions and doesn't take shit from anyone, but you do get the sense that it's not really her space. So
well, I mean, it's like a Western, right? The fucking bar goes quiet when a woman strides in. I mean, it's quite a moment. It's actually a real kind of, and that's interesting. It's a real breaking of the taboo when she strides in both times, and again, it speaks to her power And it's kind of, I mean, if you want to take it in terms of like symbolism and encoding, of course she's the one who's going to leave.
Yeah.
Because if she's prepared to do that, she's already outgrowing the norms and mores of the place. Do you know what I mean? She's already kind of moving beyond the prescribed boundaries of the society there.
The notion that it's beneath her is overt. It's pretty much overt from the beginning. You get it from every aspect of her. Her eloquence, for one thing.
Well, yeah, no, that's very true, and I think and her relative intelligence as well. As I say, she's able to to get the Mozart jibe in, it correctly and things like that. But going back slightly to that political reading, particularly the one I had on first viewing, the sort of maybe slightly simplistic nationalist unionist one. There's that scene when I think it's the one where Siobhan's bringing the first finger that Colm's chopped off back to his cottage, and she speaks to him, and they have quite it's all these scenes are absurd as well as profound, and I feel that, but they have that conversation. And it's quite an intriguing one, I think, because there's a lot of stuff that you don't know about these characters. There's a lot of stuff you don't know about Colm and Siobhan.
Yeah.
And but also if you just to read them as this is a conversation about, being sick of a place, wanting to change your life, wanting to change the polity, wanting to change, wanting to break away from something. They talk about their feelings, and he identifies his feelings as being partly in despair and partly, just something to pass the time, partly something, something to while away the hours till death. They use all this sort of metaphors. And she says like, he says like, you know what that's like. And she's like, I don't. And he just goes, you do.
Yeah, I do.
And I think that's if you, firstly, if you're applying it to the political thing, you could say, she's a nationalist at heart. She's a breakaway. She's a separatist at heart, and she's not taking that difficult look inside herself. She's not making the tough decisions Colm does. She's going to leave because it's easier, right? And I wouldn't. Anyone who wants to be out of any particular state, whether it be political, personal, emotional, financial, whatever, getting out is fine. It's a different sort of decision from trying to radically and violently change it, isn't it? And I think we all know the kind of political analogies that we could be talking about here in contemporary politics. I mean, it's no coincidence, for example, that Scotland. I was watching this film the week that that some of the current Scotland UK arguments that are working out, politically and possibly in the courts, were coming to light over recent rulings and laws. That was very much in my head. But I was also just thinking, Siobhan, if you want to take the politics out of it in a sense and make it more about the despair, the existentialism, the ticking clock. Siobhan does know that. She does know it a bit, and she sees a more constructive way out. I mean, she would argue. I'd probably argue it's a more constructive way out than what Colm's doing. And I think Colm probably identifies on some level, but he also thinks she's not really wrestling with it. She should be in more despair, really, by his reckoning.
And it's really interesting.
Sorry, Kit, go on.
I was just going to say, it reminded me of what you were saying near the beginning, George, about Podrick and the idea of the island as Eden, because it kind of is, but it's also is hell.
Yeah.
Because as endless and as changeless as it feels to be, it's actually not. Change is inevitable. Death is inevitable. As a kind of manifestation of change. What's happening with Colm, if Colm had gone to his grave lying about the friendship and so forth, he'd still have died eventually. He's still older. Podrick would still have been left on his own at that point. You know what I mean? Like, there's an inevitability. Like, Podrick's refusal to accept any change at all, like refusal to accept change as a concept, means he's always going to end up in a truly kind of miserable and bleak place, because it's an inevitability, even on an island as isolated and as seemingly kind of timeless and distant. Like, actually change is inevitable.
I think that is it, to be honest. I think that is at the core of the film's manifesto. That's what it's really getting at, whatever Edenic childhood Porrick thinks that he has or had at one time, it's ephemeral, it's a delusion, and he doesn't want to let it go. I think with regards to Colm and Siobhan, I think he would regard her escape as a delusion in and of itself, because she will still find the same abyss wherever she goes, right? It doesn't matter if you're going away from this condition or not. It's going to follow you because it's part of you. It's innate. It's part of who we are.
Yeah, but I also like her sheer frustration and sort of point that she makes about the island. He talks about looking for excitement and fulfillment, and she's like, "It's a small island off the west of Ireland." But also he talks Colm riposte with, Podrick's so dull, and she's like, "You're all fucking dull.
You're all dull.
I've had enough of all of you and all of this shit." And that's where I think, the people who leave an island, or island specifically, and are sick of the argument, whether they're right to be or not, whether that's an abdication of responsibility for the future of the country, I don't know. But that's a decision loads of people have taken throughout history. But that's often what they're reacting against. I just don't want to be in the middle of this argument anymore.
Yeah.
But also to play, I guess maybe I'm playing devil's advocate a bit with that, or just to flip it over again. It's like, I mean, yeah, there is that, but there's also, I think you could make the case that she's actually, whereas Colm's pursuit is ultimately selfish and insular and a kind of bid for a type of immortality through music, but an absolute recognition that he's prepared to sacrifice, admittedly a one-sided friendship and niceness, whatever the hell that means, for a bid, a grab at immortality. I mean, there's a way in which Siobhan is very much choosing life.
Yeah.
By leaving, because she's going out, she's becoming a teacher, isn't that right? Is that the role she takes?
Yeah, and I love her talking about, she's saying that people seem really nice around here, but maybe that's because they're all Spanish. Just makes that little reference to other things going on, But
like that's just huge, the idea that, because that's going out. I mean, that's going out into the world. That's choosing to become part of something bigger. That's, you know what I mean? Like it's and I guess Europe. Yeah. Well, it's a. I guess you could describe it as a different kind of activism. And I guess if we're going to play with a political analogy, maybe it's the difference between, being part of a political movement and being part of a more kind of direct action type thing, or I don't know, you know what I mean? Like something that's political in a different way rather than party political, something that's trying to affect change in a different way.
Maybe something that's cultural, or that it's ideological in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's also a bit of a Tony Soprano-Janice relationship nascently here, isn't there? The man who stays and the sister who goes.
Yeah.
I was thinking that actually, in terms of the sort of curdling of sibling relationships, if you're to take these as real characters that continue beyond the film, which, to an extent they are, I suppose, at least theoretically, I was thinking it's so interesting that Podrick, in that letter back to her, he lies to her. And he lies to her that the donkey's still alive and giving comfort, even sort of almost like partakes of an imaginary dialogue between him and his donkey, in the letter, which but which is really deceptive. But also, he doesn't lie to her about Dominic's death. But the reason I think he doesn't lie to her about Dominic's death is it gives him more of an excuse to stay on the island. He actually says, "So there'll be no one to look after the animals." But one of the animals isn't there anymore, and he hasn't told her that. So it's just, it sort of reminds me of the end of like this arbitrary reference, the season 8 of Doctor Who, when Capaldi's Doctor and Clara are lying to each other.
Yeah.
That sort of parting,
Yeah, that's a good shout, and it's interesting, isn't it? Again, Coles, because there is something, but it's almost like. I mean, you could read that a couple of ways. You could read it that Podrick's actually trying to preserve the illusion of Eden for her, or you could argue that he's just desperate to pretend the donkey's alive because it's just too painful for him to like. But he doesn't want to, or he doesn't want to hurt her feelings. Maybe he thinks she'll be as upset as he will because he's fundamentally incapable of understanding that other people don't think and feel exactly the same way he does, right? I mean,
also he doesn't know that she had that tender moment with Dominic, does he?
No, that's true.
It may also be the case that a part of him acknowledges that she has escaped, that she's out, and that he doesn't want to give her a reason to come back.
Maybe. Yeah, because you're right. The Dominic thing, he doesn't know. He doesn't know that that he propositioned her, so he isn't aware of any of that. So that's not an intentional twist of the knife on his part or an attempt to bring her back, is it? That's just...
He also doesn't know how caringly and empathetically she dealt with that.
Yeah,
because he could imagine that he may have propositioned her and she would have just gone, "Oh, feck off, Dominic," or whatever. Which on another day she might have done,
Absolutely, because we see her being terribly rude to him earlier on, don't we?
So in her own home. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
One thing I on rewatch, and this is like almost like one thing I want to point out and one question I want to ask you, but they're both about some of the same imagery. And I spotted one of these on the first watch and one on rewatch today. The one I spotted on rewatch was There's the bit just before that scene where Dominic and Siobhan talk by the lake, where she looks across the lake and sees the old woman, Mrs. McCormick, seemingly beckoning her through the lake to the other side of it. But it was only on rewatch that I realized that that's just before Dominic comes up right behind her and startles her. So actually, Mrs. McCormick may have been beckoning Dominic there. And it just looks to her like she's beckoning her, so if you want to get into the sort of mysticism and, Bansheeism of it, that's there. The other thing, and the questions, that's the observation, the question I was going to ask you, because I remember bringing this up to my friend Chris after I saw it, was there's that scene where Siobhan departs Inisherin, and Podrick's on the cliffside waving her off, and you have that shot where I think the way it plays out is Siobhan looks back suddenly at the coast, looking slightly perturbed, and you then cut to that sort of side shot of Podrick, and on the cliff behind him, you see a figure clad in black stood on the cliff, behind him, but completely. I did check this. There's a few. I think it's in at least 2 shots, but both times it's out of focus sufficiently to not see exactly who that is. And I think it's to the extent that you're meant to have certainty, it's meant to be old Mrs. McCormick. It's meant to be mysticism. It's meant to be this harbinger of this coming death. But it's sufficiently out of shot that you've had Colm striding around in these big black flowing coats for most of the movie. It could be Colm, and I think there's meant to be at least a little bit of ambiguity there. And if there isn't, I'm putting my own in, because I think Colm's relationship and feelings towards Siobhan, and not just Siobhan as a woman maybe, but Siobhan, what she represents and what her intelligence represents. I think there's a way in which he could very feasibly be stood on that cliff waving her off too, or seeing her off.
Well, and kind of mourning her passing from the island, because she's one of the. I mean, you're right. She's one of the. She's the only character we meet that's at least his intellectual equal, if not better, right?
Yeah.
And that
understands dynamically what he's going through, as he says himself.
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's this whole thing with mirroring. It happens again and again and again and again in this film.
Now, it's so interesting you bring it up, David, because I hadn't consciously remembered that, but as you said it was pulling out of my mind, and I remember as I was watching it, I thought it was him. It didn't even occur to me that it would be anybody else. I thought it had to be him. In fact, I even had a moment where I kind of, because of how close Podrick was to the cliff edge, I even had a moment of like, Christ, is he going to jump, or is he going to be pushed? Or,
absolutely, that's what I was thinking. I was almost thinking, is this the way the film is going to end? Yeah,
I could see him jumping. I could see him jumping in that moment. Like it felt plausible that he might.
Yeah. Because it is an end in and of itself, isn't it?
Yeah.
At that point, that's it. That everything is gone. He's lost literally everything, apart from the donkey, which of course we find shortly after that he's lost that too. I mean, politically, the donkey could represent sort of like the innocents who are killed in the conflict, right? Because it's an accident, right? It is not something anybody intends.
The symbolism of the fact that the donkey chokes on a finger.
Yeah,
that is it's almost too much. I mean,
I think there's a few bits in this film that are almost too much, to be honest. I think we were talking before about Skinamarink and the ways in which people could react to that in different ways, in positive and negative ways, and dismiss it in various ways and embrace it in other ways. This can be that kind of film as well. I can see people. I want to get this out basically because I know we're all very impressed with this, but I think there's also ways in which you could dismiss a lot of this as very heavy-handed, as very theatrical, as very overly bluntly allegorical. As I don't think you could dismiss it as a bad-looking film or not astoundingly acted. I think you'd have to be very eccentric to see it as that. But you could definitely, I definitely know people who wouldn't like this script. Yeah, like I mean, I there are moods I would be in, honestly, where I wouldn't like this script. I think I was, all the other elements made it come together really well for me. But there is a certain I don't know, insistence in the work, I suppose.
I mean, I think for me, there's a certain sort of waiting for Godot quality, right?
Yep.
And that's, let's generously call that an acquired taste, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any issue with anyone who finds Waiting for Godot, that they don't get on with it. Like, I love it, but I understand why you might not. There is stuff in it that's like, okay, yeah, sure, because there's certain aesthetic decisions and what have you that are, that might rub someone up the wrong way, and I respect that. Or Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, obviously, which is a kind of unofficial sequel to Godot anyway.
It's funny that the last. It's funny that famously the last direction of Waiting for Godot is "They do not leave," and that could also be the last line of this.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think Beckett is definitely a thing here. Beckett is definitely a thing.
Yeah.
And as you know, another reason people might take against this is because it is a depressing film. It's about depression. It's about despair. It's about the abyss. It's about the existential abyss of our existence, and it really does kind of force you to bend over and look right down into it.
I mean, I talk about the critical division that could be in something like this. Could I just ask you two briefly whether you saw Martin McDonagh's previous movie, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri?
Yes, I've seen
that. Yeah, see
that. Yep. Did you, very briefly, did you both like it, or what were you?
I thought it was fucking brilliant. Yeah, I really liked it.
Very much. Very much.
That's interesting because I remember that being very critically polarizing. And I remember it partly being because of the politics in it and some of the taste, perceived taste around race issues and things like that. Sure. And I read quite a lot of think pieces about it back in 2018 or whenever it was. And I agreed with a lot of the taste issues in it and stuff. And I certainly saw why a lot of people would politically frown on it and all that. But I also think it had something which I think I enjoyed it about as much as I did in this, really, where it's a black comedy. And I think a lot of the critics just didn't. I think they acknowledge that. They formally acknowledge that because they know the sort of rhythm of a black comedy and they know how to smell a black comedy when they see it. But some people, including some pretty high-level, articulate critics, I think, and some astute critics, just don't really get that. I just don't think it chimes with them because I love, and I'm not trying to be arrogant there. I don't mean that. I just mean I think I'm tuned into a certain sort of black comedy a bit more than some people because I thought 3 Billboards was hilarious.
Yep.
I didn't necessarily think it was the most sophisticated drama or a good message film or a good Oscars film. And I certainly saw, people comparing it to, Crash and the noughties and stuff. I kind of get what they mean. But it's also hilarious on a basic level. Yeah. And I remember, it's funny, actually, I know, you're both Discworld fans and, Kit, you've started this, Patreon trawl through the disc books.
Yeah.
You'll be plugging at the end. What Frances McDormand in 3 Billboards put me in mind of more than anything else. And I remember saying this to the person, to Johnny, who I saw it with at the time, she's the best screen Granny Weatherwax. I've ever seen. Her character and the way she absolutely scythes through this small, in many ways dark, corrupt, selfish community with her wit and with her force of will. She's kind of waging one-woman terrorism against this community in a way that would kind of be at home at Banshees in a different character.
Yeah, very much. I mean, that would be a very interesting experiment, wouldn't it, narratively speaking, to have a character like that in the small island setting.
Yeah, well, police corruption and fiefdoms as well, that kind of thing.
But someone who is so opposed to the corrupt traditions of this culture that it becomes their agenda to undo it. That would be fascinating.
I mean, one of the things that's interesting, I think, about Banshees and that has in common there maybe is that, I mean, you said it just then, but the corrupt fiefdom. I mean, the by far the most straightforwardly unpleasant, unlikable character in the film is the police officer.
Yeah, the one character it has absolutely no sympathy for whatsoever. None. If there is judgment in the film, it's upon him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it likes the shopkeeper very much either, but it really doesn't like the policeman. And he's just and it's everything. It's petty authority, right? It's power without any consequence whatsoever. It's
how early 2020s was Colm's line in the second confession scene when he says, if punching a policeman is a sin, we might as well pack up and go home.
A line, yeah.
Some people will stand up and cheer at that line, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just interesting to me that's just, and it's not just there, but it's also it's kind of of course, you know what I mean? There's no debate about it. There's no conversation. Everyone just shrugs of course he's a complete arsehole.
That's who that is, right?
Who else
is setting this situation
in this environment? Who else wants that job? Of course, it's him.
Of course, someone who's attracted to absolute authority and power over other people. They're going to be a narcissist or a psychopath, aren't they? And
it is. And you're right. You said it earlier, David. But it's definitely the harshest, toughest and fairest blow that Podrick lands on Colm when they're having the big confrontation in the pub at the halfway mark. Like, so why are you hanging out with him? Yeah. And tellingly, he doesn't really have an answer.
Yeah, maybe you were never nice.
Yeah,
as well. It's what that's the end of that argument for him. I think that's Podrick's like high level of perception as well, possibly whether he's right or wrong. And there isn't really a way to be objectively right or wrong about that. But his perception there, it feels like he's sort of crested the mountaintop, doesn't it? It's like he is seeing less admirable things in his friend.
Yeah. Also, isn't it telling that that's also clearly the worst thing Podrick can imagine saying about someone?
Yeah.
Maybe you were never very nice. It's literally that's the most vile insult he can think of.
I'm glad we came back to that, because that was something, we just mentioned the Discworld, but one thing that the niceness thing, what's the value of niceness? What's the value of niceness in 100 years? And all the arguments around that sort of voiced differently by different characters. It actually reminded me weirdly of, I think it's Hogfather, but it's, that quite, I think like one of the most iconic quotes from Discworld, where Death is talking about grinding down the universe to its smallest atoms. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but and not finding the smallest atom of justice, the smallest.
That's exactly what he says. That's exactly what he says. Grind down the universe to the finest powder, pass it through the finest sieve, and show me 1 gram of justice.
Yeah, the idea similarly of niceness being, meaning nothing. Really, meaning nothing. The universe has no niceness. It's most existentialist. At this film, at its most existentialist, one could agree with Colm and say that that's meaningless, right? But its niceness is absolutely everything to us at exactly the same time.
Right. Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Because the flip side of that is what I realise hearing you say it in those terms is like it is fundamentally a clash of terms, because Colm's looking at it through a specific lens of like history and the notion of immortality being whether or not, as I was saying earlier, whether or not you've managed to scratch your name in the tree of the world, whether or not people remember. But of course there are other ways to be remembered than producing a work that people talk about.
Yeah, I think that's the fundamental misapprehension in Colm, isn't it? He's equated fame with worth.
Yeah. And the idea and but it's interesting because what complicates it and what means that he remains sympathetic is he's specifically, it's not just that, it is about art and ability of art to resonate. And of course that is something that I suspect all three of us on this call will have some sympathy as an idea, because we're all fans of art, right? We have resonant art that was produced before any of us were born, that has had an impact on us and
absolutely
the way we think and feel about the world and stuff. So we recognise the inherent value of art. We recognise the strength of Colm's argument in that sense. But in another way, he's measuring it completely wrong.
Yeah, well, and even that is complicated, isn't it? When he removes his capacity to create it. Wow.
In the second confession scene, I think it's the second confession scene, it's one of them. Colm specifically denies that pride is a sin, or rather, it's not a sin he's going to acknowledge or act on. He's not going to believe that that's a sin for him, or that it's worthy of the term sin. And pride is, creative, pride in your work, pride in your reputation, pride in your the things you leave behind, And I think there's something. It's funny. This is again where it really, really complicates my reading of Colm as the nationalist or the separatist, because Colm's in many ways also an anti-Catholic rebel.
Oh yeah,
but he's the only one shown directly engaging with organised Catholicism.
Yeah, it's a very complex relationship, isn't it? You get the impression that he's accessing the confessional and the rites of Catholicism because there is no such thing as therapy or counselling outside.
Whereas Dominic says they're a bunch of gobshites. They offered to take him they offered to take Dominic to church on their donkey cart, and he's just, they're a bunch of gobshites. He's not. He walks off in the other direction.
Again, kind of demonstrating his innate wisdom, because he's absolutely right.
but I love what you said there about the idea that he's rather cynically using confessional as a kind of form of therapy. Because the other thing I thought of when you were saying that was a character I've discussed certainly with you, David, at some length, but I thought immediately of Fitz in Cracker, because Fitz is kind of an aggressive atheist, right?
Yeah.
But he's also undeniably Catholic.
Catholic. Yeah.
Nothing about Fitz makes sense if you don't understand that he comes from a Catholic background, that he was raised
absolutely.
Catholic.
One of my closest friends, who's actually an ex of mine, Ray, he was raised. He's Northern Irish, raised in a very Catholic household, but he is he's gay and is aggressively atheist, far more than I am, as a result of that experience. But the Catholicism is still like, he says it himself. You cannot divorce yourself from that identity.
Springsteen talks about it in interviews all the time. He's like, my kids are happy heathens, but he said, and I'm an atheist, but I'm also a Catholic. I'm always a Catholic. I'm never going to get away from it. Like I can't. And it's just interesting to me because in that sense, I love the idea of Colm as a kind of, anti-Catholic rebel, but also Catholic as fuck, actually.
Well, also in that second scene, because the priest is somewhat of a figure of fun, especially that first confession scene that Colm runs away from. But in that second scene, it's not a long scene, but he's not being a bad priest come therapist, is he? Like he is teasing things out and he is asking what he considers sins and what he doesn't. And then it's that scene when it's one of our big insights into Colm's thinking outside of pontificating to other characters and arguing with Podrick and stuff. The priest does say, and the despair, how's that? And is it back? And he's like, it's back a bit. It's one of Colm's quieter moments as well, where he's like, to be honest, despite or through or because of all this stuff I've done, the despair's there.
But don't you think that resonates with the moment where Siobhan confronts him and says, "You're not well"? Actually, he isn't. I mean, because he cuts his own fingers off. This is not the action of a man.
No,
sorry,
it isn't. Not. I mean, almost everything Colm does could be viewed as irrational. I mean, from the very first instance, which is the breaking off of the relationship seems fairly irrational in the manner in which he does it, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I mean, and that carries right through. I mean, there's, we touched briefly on it. This is in addition to being, wonderfully acted with there isn't a weak link in the cast. This is exquisitely shot.
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it?
Directed and edited. There's a scene that I keep coming back to, which is the scene of Podrick, setting fire to the house and Colm sitting inside it.
Yeah.
As the house is starting to catch fire. And obviously we know that he leaves in between that and the last scene. He doesn't stay in the house. But in the moment, I was quite convinced he was going to.
Me too.
He was just going to sit, because it's the whole way. I mean, let's talk about that for a second. The way it resolves with Podrick actually telling him, "I'm going to burn your house down.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it after church, right, on Sunday. I'm going to do it at 12 o'clock, whatever."
Mm-hmm.
That's very Calvary, by the way. And again, the other brother, but giving someone an ultimatum and saying you're going to do this thing, and they can, you're going to come and get them, and they can deal with that however they want, but you'll be there. That's very Calvary, and obviously it's very Western and everything. But
And the escalation in that moment is profound.
Yeah, but also the way it ends with that line about is that, I take it you burn my house down, so I guess that's the end of it now. And again with Colm, you got to think he's thinking, well, at least I am actually rid of this fucking guy. Like, if it costs me the house, it's worth it, because at least it's over. And that wonderful reply, it would have been over if you'd stayed in the house.
It's amazing. Well, I also like it, in smaller microcosm, the scene where he gives the ultimatum and says, I'm coming for you on Sunday, and then the cop turns up and he's being an arsehole, and Colm punches him out. And Podrick's response to that is just to do that wonderful thing where he just fondly taps Brendan Gleeson on the cheek a few times, and he just goes, "See you Sunday."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's so complex. The interaction there, the communication that's happening there.
You know what I love about that? That is there is a deeper morality than whatever the fuck is going on between Colm and Podrick. And that deep morality is fuck the police. And I do love that. I do genuinely love the way that is handled.
But also,
I mentioned Westerns before, and it's also a bit like one of those Leone films, isn't it? Where, the man in the white hat and the man in the black hat will keep their date. And it doesn't really matter what the forces of temporal order do.
Yeah, exactly.
They will do anything to get each other out of those situations so that they can meet in the cemetery at the end.
Yeah, exactly that. So the policeman is an invader in the story at that moment, and that's
because they become myths. They become a mythic duel.
Or it reminds me of a line in the Mayans, which is the spin-off TV series from Sons of Anarchy, where there's a couple of members of the Mayan biker gang, and they end up in a big scrap with a rival gang, and they're literally in the middle of the fight when the cops turn up, and one of them turns to the guy in the other gang and just says, "Patches before badges." And that's all he has to say, and then they immediately split up to get away from the police, because it's no, this is
this is not how it happens.
And it's a mortal beef, but it's nothing compared. We don't we don't do this shit in front of the cops, and we have a shared code that is outside of that we observe, and but again those and of course the final payoff line is the dog, right? The final payoff line is that Podrick looks after Com's dog and gives it back to him at the end, and he said, last line of the movie, thanks for looking after my dog. Of course. It's
a moment for Podrick as well, isn't it? Because you get Mrs. McCormick coming up behind him during that scene where he's striding purposely towards Cole's house and saying, don't kill his dog. And Podrick's like, don't put ideas in my head that weren't there before. And because it's become such a dark film, you're like, animals have already been harmed. You're like, oh, he's going to kill the dog, isn't he?
Yeah.
And then he doesn't. And it's these men, whatever their many faults, these men both love animals.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, isn't it? Like Com is genuinely devastated when he finds out the fucking donkey's died. Like he's gutted.
Yeah, genuinely, he did not intend that. Right? It's absolutely, yeah.
And he understands in that moment. He finally, isn't that weird? Like he can't get part of the problem is he can't ever get a straight read on Podrick, right? He doesn't really he fundamentally doesn't understand Podrick any more than Podrick understands him, right? Like he doesn't understand why this guy will not leave him the fuck alone. I'm gonna cut my fingers off. You're still not leaving me alone. But that's the first moment where you feel like there is a moment of shared empathy where he's like, yeah, okay, I get why you're pissed off.
Yeah.
You're upset. You're upset about the donkey. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened.
There's an establishment of something sincere, maybe arguably for the first time in the relationship.
There's finally a bridge of empathy between these two men, and of course it's far too late because now it's acceptable that it's got to go crash bang wallop. But
isn't it interesting in that final encounter when they're on the beach? There is almost a sense that the resignation has become like a stepping stone towards a new level of relationship for them. It may be one of mutual hatred, it may be one of antagonism, but there is a relationship established there again.
Yeah, well, I see that line's being quoted quite a lot in reviews of this, isn't it? And some people's highlights of it in that scene where people, is it Colm says, is it Podrick or Colm who says there's no going back from this, from things like this, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Podrick. I think actually it's Podrick that says.
Interestingly,
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah. Because Com's the one who's trying to close out. He's like, well, you burned my house down, so I guess we're even now, right?
Yeah.
And Podrick's the one who's like, nah, this is not over. It's never over.
That's another thing as well that makes me think that the 1920s setting is deliberate. Like we've got decades to come of this.
Yeah, of course.
We're just getting started.
Yeah, and also, I mean, is it interesting? That is a growing up moment for Podrick as well. It's him actually saying, taking control of the situation. It's like, no. You have been in control of this from moment one, not anymore. I define the terms and the limits now.
Yeah, this is my island too, and it's worth fighting for from my perspective.
Exactly.
There is that. I also think that, and I think that is true, and I also think that for Podrick it genuinely is an unforgivable loss.
Yeah.
Like he's not ever getting past it.
Yeah, I think that's right.
He isn't, and therefore, he's never going to let Com forget it. Like he's never going to, because there is no payment for that's going to be enough.
No, I think he's absolutely honest and right when he says that if you stayed in the house, then that would have been the end of it.
And again, if you want to look at that in terms of the politics of what's going to come in the next 100 fucking years, it's not over. It's never over. It's not going to get let go.
It's an interesting decision if you take that as political allegory, and particularly allegory of the escalation of violence in political conflicts. It's an interesting decision to have Dominic die, but we were saying it's not Siobhan's fault that Dominic dies. It's also not Podrick's directly, because I can definitely imagine a thing of this where Dominic is drunkenly passed out in Com's hut, say, and gets burned. In fact, that's easy to do, isn't it? And then he gets burned, and he's the next escalation, and he is the blood on Podrick's hands, and it's a greater blood, or at least a more human blood, and it's kind of interesting they don't do that,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, one of the things this is about is the innocent casualties,
Yes.
And obviously the donkey's innocent, as we discussed earlier. I mean, he's not, the difference between good and innocent is kind of defined by Dominic, because he's not good, but he is innocent. And I think, and also, let's not forget the innocent fiddle player who's fleeing the island, convinced that he's lost yet another family member to a marauding bread van. I mean, that's...
I'm glad this film doesn't have a post-credit sequence, but that would be an allowable.
That would be definitely.
Yeah, he just gets
Wouldn't
back
that
and
be
he's like,
great?
he's fine.
Or wouldn't it have been absolutely brilliant if he arrived home and found that it was actually true?
Well, I like the idea that Pori goes back to his heart, and this guy's just doused it in gas. He's holding him back. She says, "You said they were dead."
Pushes him in.
It sets fire to the house, end.
I've just remembered that Three Billboards has an act of arson as a sort of political statement in it as well.
Yeah, big moment.
Yeah, they burn a police station down?
She burns the police station on the ground with. It turns out that one of the coppers inside it still.
Right, so maybe that's where I was going with the Dominic idea. Yeah.
There's one other kind of image that I'm really struck with, and I haven't found a place to kind of talk about it. But since we may be getting towards wrapping up, and it's an image of. It's towards the end of the movie, and it's after Colm has actually removed all of his fingers, so it's right near the end. But there's a moment where they go back to the pub, and both the men are in the pub, and Porrig observes Colm, and he's now, because he can't play the fiddle anymore, he's now directing the rest of the band to play. And as he's doing it, he's literally splashing his own fiddle and the table and the other musicians with blood from his hand. And it's the most incredible, macabre image right near the end of this film. And the look on his face as he's like aggressively conducting them to play this piece of music that he's written, and that he, at this point, kind of sacrificed a hand for. I don't know. It really hit me. I mean, this is not a film short of amazing shots, amazing imagery, all that kind of stuff. Like it's, as I said before, it's exquisitely well made and well shot. But god damn that image! I mean,
that is something it does actually quite consistently, especially in its latter chapters. It does give you these very stark images of mutilation and violence. I mean, the framing of the first finger when it's thrown at the door, is hideous. It's funny. It's really, really damn funny.
Yeah.
Later, when he's framed walking towards Siobhan and Podrick, and you don't even see his full frame first, but you see the hand, and then he's in that big black coat, and he looks like this mad avenging angel.
It's simultaneously shocking and stark and morbid and very, 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 very funny indeed.
Yeah, it never stops being funny, I think, the film. I think it's even a little bit funny at that scene on the beach at the end,
Yeah.
The grand things they're talking about, the crimes and misdemeanors and misunderstandings and betrayals they're talking about. There is also a sense of, so see you next time for round two,
Yeah, definitely.
Same time next week,
There is as well as a pathos, there is a humour to thanks for looking after my dog. I mean, that's funny. And the way he's like, of course. And it's one of those things. I mean, it's one of the things I said in the essay I wrote about it. One of the things that I found astonishing about this movie was it was a movie that it is a very Irish story.
Yeah,
and the setting is absolutely integral to the way the story is told and the way it plays out. At exactly the same time as that's true, it is, as far as I'm concerned, absolutely a completely universal story about humans and human interactions and friendship and what it means and what it doesn't, and the unknowability of the other, and that's pretty fucking impressive.
It is pretty amazing. I mean, the levels, I don't know why going in, I didn't expect this film to be operating on the levels that it does. I didn't expect it to be anything in particular, to be honest, but it's incredible, not only the levels of operation, but how succinctly it communicates them.
Yeah. That's where I think the Irishness is so important, because there is something about how the particular way of expression in that time and place where characters say an absolute shit ton with very, very little. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's exquisite. I mean, it's exquisite writing, it's exquisite performance. But
one of the lads I noted down was when Colm's talking about art and music and the lasting legacy of that. He starts one of his lines with "yet," and Patrick immediately cuts in with "yet," he says, like he's English. yeah, being a 3-letter word, but like being seen as like rhetorical and grand enough and pretentious enough to to bring back the English into the conversation.
I mean, one of the big laughs I had was in the pub confrontation where Colm is saying to him that like history is littered with the corpses of nice men, but nobody remembers their names, but everyone remembers Mozart. And Podrick says, "Well, I don't."
So that's that theory.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. I mean,
it's so. I love that because it's so petulant too, isn't it? Yeah, that's just that is.
And it's kind of true as well.
Yeah. He's he is actually proving a sort of point there. Yeah. Also, Dominic, they talk about the Civil War, and Dominic's sort of thinking about it when they're drinking by the dock, and he's like, "Wars, I'm again them.
Yeah.
Wars and soap."
Wars and soap. That's great.
There's Dominic right there.
That's great. I love that.
The wisdom and the not side by side.
I mean, wow. I mean, this film was amazing, wasn't it? I mean, it's one of those films where I don't know about you guys. I had to pause for breath after,
Yeah. No, I think the missus and I sat and picked it apart for a good half an hour after we finished watching it because it was just processing, that actual raw kind of like what the fuck just happened.
Sometimes, there are pieces of media, certainly films that I'll watch, and they'll have me pacing up and down my little place, talking to myself. And this was one of those films.
Yeah, just working it out.
Well, I have to say as well, I did think of both of you. That was the other thing. I was like, I wonder if David's seen this yet. Maybe we should, because fucking hell.
It's a film that demands to be talked about, isn't it? It's a film that absolutely demands your attention, and it demands to be dissected and analysed and spoken about. And it's also one of those films where it wants you to go forth and evangelise about it.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it was a thing of like, I knew I wanted to have a conversation because I didn't want to pick it apart publicly online with people, because there's always a thing about like when you do something like that on social media, there's always someone who hasn't seen it, and I don't want to spoil it for anybody. But I did an essay which I stuck up on Patreon, but I knew I wanted to get on mic about it as well because it's also one of those things where, again, I mean, and you guys both did a rewatch, I didn't, but even with that in mind, like I knew there'd be stuff. When you can absorb a text and it's rich enough. That there's going to be stuff you missed that you're going to want to see what other people's. I mean, that's the other thing about it for me. Like, I was really desperate to get like, what are other people's perspective on this?
Yes.
What from it you see, because it's a rich enough text that I think. I mean, obviously, at this point, fortunately, because of the amount of non-fiction critical work I've done, I'm very aware of the baggage I bring to a piece of art, and that's fine because I think everyone does.
Yeah.
And that's okay, but I was really interested to see, what other perspectives were on that. So I'm really glad we got the chance to do this.
Likewise. I mean, again, like yourself, it's one of those texts, I think, that is so rich and sumptuous and resonant with meaning, that it can only become richer through the discussion of.
Yeah, a real pleasure to talk to both of you about it. And obviously, if there's one thing the film also makes you feel, it's that conversational friendships are worth maintaining, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, like, it kind of makes you want to connect with humanity in a way, because it is. I mean, one of the warnings I would put on this film actually is that it's very despairing. I mean, it's like unambiguously despairing in many respects, and I would be careful of it if you happen to be feeling down, or if you are in a depressive episode or anything like that, because it has the potential to make it worse.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's interesting you said that, David, because I think that's something that I think I put it in the essay. I certainly meant to towards the end. It was like, it's one of those movies that's because it's so powerful, and because it is about a powerful truth about you can never really know another person, you never really know what's going on with them, because it resonates with, we both been, everyone's been on both sides of this at some point in their life. I did kind of say, I think in the essay at the end, like, it's worth remembering that It doesn't have to go like this. You know, like,
right.
Actually, you
it's
can
definitely a limit case. Yeah,
you can just have friends that you stay friends with, and that's great. Like like you have meaningful relationships with. You both grow, you both evolve, but you stay in touch and things, and like that happens too. It is because that's what you're saying. Like I understand what you're saying, George, and that's for me like. It is a powerful truth about a particular thing that can happen. It doesn't actually represent the entirety of human experience.
No, absolutely not.
There are also good relationships that flourish and have mutual respect, and you all that kind of stuff. And but we don't make movies about them as often because they're not.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, it's very rare. I think it's very rare for a film to so sincerely explore existential ennui to this degree. I really do.
So that I did see a mini series recently that did do a good job of exploring it in a more positive way. There was a show called Mayflies, which 2 or 3 part that was on. I can't remember. I want to say ITV or Channel 4. Yeah, it's really nice. It's got the guy from Line of Duty, the Scottish guy who's not playing a Scot in Line of Duty. That narrows it down. And a friend anyway. But it's I mean the opening 5 minutes basically is the two of them. These are people who've been friends since university, and they're in their 50s. And his mate basically turns around to him and says, "I've got cancer. It's terminal. I've got a bucket list. I need your help." Basically. And that is just, I mean, it is, in some ways it's similar. It is a meditation on mortality, but it's really affirming because it's about lifelong friendship, and it's about how these two friends navigate this completely impossible, preposterous, horrible thing that's happening to one of them. Right. And how they figure out a way through it, what they do. And it's not, and it's heavy, but it's uplifting. I found it to be uplifting.
That's funny. I thought you were going to say, he just turns around to this friend and goes, "Well, I'm a bit busy this month, but we should get something in the diary."
Yes.
We'll definitely do that. We'll definitely get together and plan a bucket list. We'll do it. Yeah.
We'll make time.
We'll make time. We will make. No, that would be great. It's been a while. Yeah.
Well, guys, bringing that to a close, is there anything you guys would like to pimp out before we go?
Yeah, I'll go first, if that's all right.
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, so I do a podcast called the EscapeGoat Podcast, and I've been doing that since early 2020, and I've over those few years now, I've got out 51 episodes of that, partly with the aid of these two wonderful gentlemen.
Absolutely, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, you've been on a handful each, haven't you? And
we have. I think we did Duckula last, didn't we?
Yeah, I was going to say episode 51, which came out in November, which was a bit of a sort of one-off special outside the sort of series groupings, was about Count Duckula and about several other things that we chatted about there. The recent Hellraiser, Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared, the Channel 4 series, as it now is, which I still can't quite believe. Yeah. So that came out in the autumn. But basically, we're coming back, and I've been planning a bunch of them coming out this year, probably in about a month's time. Got some recordings to do, but they're going to be coming out probably fortnightly for a bit, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to cover a bit more inside number 9, which was a sort of side strand of the show as well on our ninthly thing that I run with my friend John. So more episodes of the EscapeGoat Podcast coming out soon. You can get the EscapeGoat Podcast, you can find it on Twitter at egoat_pod. You can email us on escapegoatpod@gmail.com, and you can find the whole thing on Spotify. It's on YouTube as well, and Apple Podcasts, as well as its Libsyn page. And if you like generalized discussion and some chat from Kit and George and various other interesting people about a multitude of topics, please do check it out.
Excellent. Links below, by the way, guys. Links below. Kit?
Yeah, I just want to recommend you go and listen to EscapeGoat Podcast as well, because it's one of my favourite shows out there. I love the whole approach of it. I love the enthusiasm of it. I love the esoteric nature and the fact that it's a completely different show each time, and I love that. It's just really superb. So yeah, do check it out.
Thank you.
I mean, just look at the subjects that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, like it ranges from. I mean, David and I did a really long chat about the Amiga, the Commodore Amiga at one point.
Yeah.
And we've also done Terry Pratchett's novels. We've done
Gordon
Gormenghast, yes, my
Flight
goodness,
of Dragons,
yeah. Flight of Dragons, yes.
What Kit doesn't know about either the UK House of Cards trilogy or the Stephen King anthology Skeleton Crew.
Yeah.
Well, if we didn't fit in those podcasts, we gave it a damn good try.
We really did try. Yeah, we certainly gave it the old college try. Yeah. So for me, what do I want to plug at the moment? I mean, obviously, I'm a writer. I write fiction and non-fiction. All of my work's available. The easiest thing to do is just to go to Amazon, look up Kit Power Underbooks. You'll find my Amazon author page. All of my books are there available. My ebooks tend to be Amazon exclusive, so just get them for your Kindle from there. If you want to buy the paperbacks for any of my work, they've got ISBN numbers, so maybe get them from your local bookshop if you can be bothered, or indeed sometimes direct from the publishers. Most of my work's sort of independently published in many cases. If you get it direct from the publisher, they'll save a bit of money, and that's a good thing to do. So support your local publishers, support your independent bookshops. The one I'll plug obviously is the one that's just come out, My Life in Horror Volume 2, following the successful crowdfunder. So if you enjoyed this discussion and you want more non-fiction, this kind of exploration of pop culture artifacts, but in written form, in essay form, My Life in Horror Volume 2 will sort you out.
Definitely. And it's also I just got my copy. It's a really beautiful, like, hardback book as well, isn't it? As an artifact,
Well, I mean, you guys got the crowdfunder edition, which is, good looking, but the general release version is very good looking as well. So the ebook is already available. The paperback and hardbacks will be publicly available to buy from the 25th of February, so you can pre-order them now, again, through Amazon or any local bookshop. That's absolutely fine. And that's obviously the big project I got. And if you want to get something new from me every week, that's something new. Could be a podcast, could be an essay, could be a piece of fiction. Patreon.com/KitPower. $1 a month gets you something new every week. There's 2 Patreon exclusive podcasts running at the moment. One of them where I listen to where I read the works of Sherlock Holmes and then talk about them with Jack Graham and Daniel Harper. And there's a new podcast series that's just started, which is where I'm going through the Discworld series in order with my amazing, fantastic, brilliant daughter. So the first episode, Colour and Magic, just went up last weekend. So again, $1 a month gets you something new every week and instant access to all the podcasts that are already out there. So fill your boots, basically.
Fantastic. Again, links below, ladies and gents. Are you going to do them all, Kit? Are you planning on doing all of the Discworld books?
I mean, real talk, she's 13, so who the hell knows?
Yeah, of course.
As long as she maintains enthusiasm, I will. Because the thing is, I've read up to about the truth and no further. So
you haven't read the last?
No, and I haven't read any of it for at least 15 years.
Yeah, so interesting.
I'm really through. I gulped down the Colour of Magic in a couple of days, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So, I mean, she may or may not maintain interest in it. I don't, obviously that's unknowable, but as long as she's up for it, I definitely am, because it's
excellent.
I'd forgotten how integral Pratchett was to me. I'd forgotten how important it's a weird thing to say that too, but like, fucking hell.
I kind of had a similar experience when we did Only You Can Save Mankind.
Johnny Maxwell trilogy, right?
Yeah.
What? Actually, I should say this. That's what triggered this whole thing.
So bloody good.
I listened to that podcast and I went and bought the Maxwell trilogy for Kiddo.
Yeah.
And she read it, and then she went to her teacher, her English teacher, and said, is there any other books by this Terry Pratchett guy?
Oh, really?
Wow.
So eyes lit up, and he was like, oh my God, have I got a shelf for you? And then she picked more, and now we're doing a whole lot, apparently.
Oh, superb.
So it's your fault, actually, that I'm doing this.
Good. Excellent. Feel very happy to have obliged in that regard. That's wonderful.
But I just got it again. I know, but Only You Could Save Mankind, that is a fucking banger.
Honestly, it reminded me of just what an intelligent, just uncondescending writer he was to his audience. Absolutely. I was blown away by that. I really was. So
much to chew on there, wasn't there?
Genuinely astonishing piece. So I'm gonna read the other 2, because we'll do a show on the Maxwell trilogy as well. But because I read Only You Can Save Mankind to Kiddo for bedtime reading, and I was just completely enraptured.
I was reminded.
We should say that episode was all the richer for James Murphy's input as well. I should mention.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like, there's a line in Pratchett. It's in The Hogfather. It's towards the end. It's one that Death gives, which is, I think is probably the most beautiful encapsulation of like my own metaphysics that I've ever come across. It's where Death says that humanity exists at the point where the rising ape meets the falling angel. And I just love that.
And that's what your podcast with your daughter is setting out to do, Kit, is to find that exact point.
Yeah,
it seems like it. Yeah,
map a graph from book to book.
It's such a beautiful statement. I love it. It's Blakean metaphysics, right? It's Blakean metaphysics that he's expressing in this, somewhat jokey, japesy, sardonic book. It's absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, but that's Pratchett understood the power of humor. The idea that comedy is the opposite of seriousness is an idiot notion, and Pratchett just demolishes it with his work.
He uses it to emphasize the serious moments. When the serious moments come, they hit. They hit. I mean, they really do.
Let's be real. He learned a lot of these lessons from Adams, and that's fine. But I also think it's fair to say that he took it to a whole another level.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to Adams in it either, because Adams is a totemic writer for me. But God damn, Pratchett took that torch and ran.
Absolutely.
It's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. As for myself, guys, you can. Kit just talked about my life in horror. I'm currently carrying that torch over at the Ginger Nuts of Horror. There are already quite a few articles up under the My Life in Horror banner, all of which I'm really, really pleased with. Another one coming very, very soon. There's also a new channel knocking about here, adjacent to Exaggerated Elegy, Our Lives in Horror, which I'll leave links to below. Which this will probably turn up on as well, actually, because I think this would fit rather nicely under that banner. It's discussions like this, effectively, mostly referring to horror material, but really to anything that inspires or that we have any kind of real engagement with. There's already discussions up there with Kit and with Lex Jones, and I tell you what, Kit, I've got a long list of people who want to be on that show, which I'm really happy about now. Right. I've got many people who want to be on that show, which I'm really, really happy about. As for my published work, I will leave links below, but you can find links to all of them over at strangeplaygrounds.com. And also on my Amazon author page, which is George Lee. Apart from that, guys, also come and check out the Fluff and Hammer, if you would, which is our Warhammer podcast, which is a lot of fun. Much, but it's a bit more japesy than this one. It's a little bit more sort of like, let's talk about fantasy miniatures and how cool they are. But it's a lot of fun. Well, guys, thank you. This has been great. I mean, it's sort of, gnawing at the bit to talk about this one, as I imagine you guys have.
Absolutely.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic chat. And I hope to have you back very, very soon. Yeah. Until next time, guys.
Watch Skinamarink.
Yes.
Yeah. All right.
We need to talk about that. I mean, what's going to be really interesting is if you hate it. If you're one of the people who absolutely hates it. Right?
Well, no, we're gonna do a 5-hour episode on it if you hate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But until then, guys, bye-bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.